Coming up now is another sparkling Two Mics podcast.
Here we are. It's a big night of history. America decides, is it going to be Trump? Is it going to be Clinton? By the end of this show, we should know. It's the Two Mics election special. We're all over America. We're all over this country as well. We go to the American Embassy. We go to Trump's headquarters. We go to Clinton's headquarters. We go to all the swing states, Florida, out in Pennsylvania, over in Ohio as well. You can't wait for it to start. This is Talk Sport. We're on Talk Radio as well. Here's Tanya Snuggs with the news and sports headlines.
Thank you. Good morning. Initial calls are being made in the US presidential election after the first polls closed. Republican Donald Trump has, as expected, won in Kentucky and Indiana. Hillary Clinton has been victorious in Vermont. All the other states are too close to decide a firm winner at this stage. We've spoken to a couple of Wall Street workers in New York who gave us their thoughts on the effect of a Donald Trump victory.
I think it'll have a lot of impact on a lot of jobs throughout the country.
I think, more than anything, it'll have a social impact. I think it's kind of like one of those trickle-down effects that it wouldn't be good.
Meanwhile, one person has been killed and 3 others injured following reports of a shooting near a Los Angeles polling station. No arrests have been made so far. Both candidates are holding parties in New York tonight. Security has been stepped up and 5,000 officers have been called in. Some other news in brief, and Tesco Bank says it's paid out around £2.5 million to customers after it was hacked at the weekend. Roughly 9,000 people had money stolen, but there's no word on who was behind the thefts. And a charity's warning many people are still struggling with payday loan debts. That's despite new rules brought in 2 years ago to clamp down on irresponsible lending in the sector.
Talk Sport. Sports Update with Sport Magazine's free iPad edition. Download it from the Apple Newsstand today.
Rangers striker Kenny Miller says there's no reason his country can't cause an upset against England on Friday. Scotland go to Wembley for a World Cup qualifier under pressure after defeat by Slovakia and a draw with Lithuania. Miller told Sky Sports News that his old teammates should embrace being outsiders.
You're going into a game like this, you're definitely going into as underdogs. 1, you're away from home. 2, you're playing against a team that has got a level of player that is probably superior to you. But again, that's never been an issue for us.
England's cricketers start their 5-test series against India this morning. 19-year-old Hasib Hamid will make his debut in Rajkot. He'll open alongside captain Alistair Cook with Gary Ballance dropped. Cook says he's not impressed enough to keep his place.
An unfortunate decision on Gary. Unfortunately, in his six test matches back, he hasn't quite scored the runs which he would have liked to have done. So it's given someone else an opportunity.
Wasps flanker Nathan Hughes could make his England Rugby Union debut this weekend after being retained in a 25-man squad. 2 of those players will miss out on Saturday's match against South Africa at Twickenham. Northampton's Taymana Harrison is released, but his club captain and fellow back rower Tom Wood stays. Johnny May and Marlon Yard are expected to start on the wings. And double Olympic champion Heather Stanning has announced her retirement from rowing. The 31-year-old successfully defended her pairs title at this year's Rio Games with her partner Helen Glover. She'll continue serving as a major in the British Army. Glover has described her as dependable, determined and a formidable athlete. All the latest sports news is on our website. That's talksport.com.
Simulcast across the UK on Talk Sport and Talk Radio. US Election 2016 special with the Two Mics.
I'm Mike Graham, he's Mike Parry. You're listening to the Two Mics election special on TalkSport and Talk Radio. It's a night of history in the making as America decides whether to elect a president who's never held political office or the first ever woman leader. Here's Hillary.
So many people are counting on the outcome of this election, what it means for our country, and I'll do the very best I can if I'm fortunate enough to win today.
Donald Trump's convinced he's going to storm the White House later on this morning, but has he done enough?
Everybody's talking about the record turnout at the polls. It's amazing, but please go to the polls. We have a movement going on. They've never seen anything like it. Go to the polls and vote. We're going to make America great again.
We'll see about that. It's going to be a night of drama from sea to shining sea, from California to New York. By the end of this show, the world will be a different place. You're listening to the Two Mikes Election Special with me, Mike Graham, and Mike Parry. So here we are. It's been 4 years since the last one. We could have the first female American president of all time, or we could have the first time a president who is, in fact, someone who has never held political office. Donald Trump, Mike Parry, Mike Graham, Sandy Waugh. We're all here. Very good morning to you, Mr. Parry.
Very good morning to you, Mike. And as always, by the end of a Two Mike show, the world will have changed.
The world will have changed. I'm delighted to say Sandy Waugh's joined us for the show as well, because we're going to need an awful lot of help in seeing
got the abacus out.
You've got the abacus out.
Taken my socks off so I can use my toes to count.
Yeah, tea leaves, the whole thing.
Seaweed, the whole shooting match. Because let's face it, that could be as accurate as any other sort of prediction we've had.
Well, the most
going.
interesting thing for me so far is that we don't know how accurate the polls are going to be, and we'll only really know how accurate the polls are once the actual results start coming in. We're now seeing that Florida's being called in favour of Hillary Clinton, I think, Mr. Parry, as you pointed out. Which is very significant, because we don't believe Trump can win the whole shooting match without Florida.
Yeah.
But Sandy, tell us just roughly where we are right now.
Well, the latest results, they're coming in bits and bobs. And, of course, as we know, the issue will be the big states that have lots of big numbers of the Electoral College votes as they come in.
Florida,
so this is not like following a British election where you're just stacking up the numbers in that sense, because they're going to come in blocks. But as we stand right now, the latest, and the target is 270.
Yeah.
So Hillary Clinton has 68. Yeah. Donald Trump has 57. Far too early to read anything much into that. One of the reasons it's too early is there are various phenomena developing as we go into the night, one of which is an enormous turnout. In some places, they're reporting it could be as high as 90% turnout, which is just extraordinary. People are literally queuing in their cars for something like a mile in some of these areas. New Hampshire.
But we don't know who that benefits, do we?
We
don't know which candidate that
benefits.
Are more people coming out for Trump because they so hate Hillary Clinton, or is it vice versa? Because one statistic I've seen already is that 25% of all people voting in America tonight are only voting for their candidate because they hate the other candidate more than the candidate they are voting for.
Absolutely. One of the similar statistic I've seen, only 42% of the people who counted their vote and been asked on an exit poll say they strongly favoured the person that they were voting for. So it's a negative vote in many ways.
There's never been an election like it where the two candidates have such a big unlikability factor.
Exactly.
It's just extraordinary, isn't it?
Exactly.
And whatever happens, there's going to be what we keep hearing. There's going to be an awful lot of healing, as they call it, that's going to need to be done, Mike, because apparently, the two opposite sides hate each other too much. I was saying just before on the sports bar that I've heard from some people in New York that they've got window barricades ready for the upper end of Fifth Avenue.
I find this amazing, Mike.
I
wanted to ask you a little bit more about this, because you and I have both lived in New York, and we know the magnificence of that city. I'm talking about Manhattan here, OK?
Yeah.
So people start rampaging round there with 5, petrol bombs and all this kind of stuff and start going mad, an awful lot of damage could be done. But do we seriously believe that it's going to, the sort of stuff you're talking about is the sort of stuff we'd be used to in some of the southern states, like hillbilly reaction
the sort of thing we've seen in London,
to local elections and that kind of stuff.
We're talking sort of the sort of things we've seen in London with very volatile crowds, very, very fired up, because Trump has fired these people up, believe me.
Yeah.
He has told them that we're in a once-in-a-lifetime situation here. Don't lose that chance to change the system. He calls the system corrupt. He calls it rigged. He says that now it's time to take the White House back for the people. If they fail, they're not going to be happy.
This is the biggest election day policing effort that New York has ever put on. There are 5,000 police officers being deployed in New York, partly because both candidates are there, also because it is New York, and obviously cameras and the eyes of the world will be on New York. But they're certainly making contingency plans in case, because of all these undertones, direct tones of negativity.
Well, don't forget, lots of journalists who have been called the enemy by Donald Trump have found themselves in Trump rallies where the people who are the Trump supporters, and I'm not saying, official Trump supporters, but people who are on his side, are making the old throat-slitting sign.
Oh, yeah,
and looking at them. These are not people who are going to take defeat well.
One thing I found odd is that somebody pointed out that, is Mr. Trump psychologically flawed? Well, in my opinion, most people who end up as the leaders of their countries are psychologically psychologically flawed.
You would expect some kind of psychological problem.
Well,
yeah.
I mean, wasn't George W. Bush a bit psychologically flawed when he decided to pick up on a war that his father had got involved in, but he said had not ended?
Funnily enough, there's been quite a few bits of social media which have been tickling me all throughout the day. One of them is a picture of George W. Bush with a caption that says, "And you thought I was an idiot." You know, and you have to say, it's a ridiculous choice that people are having to make.
Even in this country, Gordon Brown was accused of being psychologically flawed, wasn't he? You know,
by the chief advisor to the Labour Party.
Yeah, and I think all politicians have some psychological flaw within their bonds because they want to lead and change the world. And so it doesn't surprise me. I mean, John F. Kennedy was psychologically flawed. Yeah. His psychological flaw related to women, which, in fact, could have cost him his presidency.
Well, you might say the same about Bill Clinton.
Could have said the same about Bill Clinton, indeed.
Now, before we go any further, I'm going to go back to you, Sandy, in a second. I just want to map out slightly what we're going to be doing for you. Yeah. Coming up later on in this hour, we're going to go over to Trump HQ in New York. Both headquarters in New York, of course, because Hillary Clinton and Trump both based themselves there. Yeah. We're going to talk to Sam Delaney from Talk Radio, who's out there in Washington, D.C. We're going to Alex Dibble, who's at the US Embassy Party. We might have a surprise guest from the US Embassy Party as well. We're also going to talk to
James
be my
old
Dean.
Friend, could it?
It could well be. Editor, the US business editor for The Times is coming on. He's at the Clinton Party, of course, as well. And also, even though it is not the normal show that we're doing tonight, so we're here all the way through until 6 a.m., there will be an Ask Porky coming up a little bit later on.
Indeed.
And much of it will be related to the US election and US issues, of course. Now, Sandy, have we had anything surprising yet in terms of any of the results that have come in?
No, I think the surprise is the number of the turnout and the way it's going down on the ground, and I think that's what's throwing people. And the time scale of what we're talking about is also being sort of ripped up and rewritten. We were expecting to get, obviously we've got this trickle of results coming in. In fact, we had some declarations as early as sort of yesterday morning our time, because there were some little places in New Hampshire that open and close the polls within about half an hour. We were expecting, if we were going on the 2012 pattern, to be getting a whole flood of results between about 1 and 2, and to be in a position to possibly call this at about 4 o'clock our time. Now, what will be uncertain now is because the turnout is so high in some places, whether that's going to push that back a little bit. But that's the sort of timescale we're looking at. As I said, at the moment, results trickling in. We've still got 68 Clinton, 57 Trump, 270, that magic number before anyone can call it, something like 4 o'clock possibly. Okay. But hey, it could be an even longer night than that.
Indeed. Do you think that Hillary Clinton, she's now neck and neck with Trump, according to the polls, but she's the worst orator I've seen in American politics who's gone for the presidency for a long, long time. If you think of her husband, the way he could grab a crowd.
Clinton was brilliant.
If you think that Obama, actually, his greatest strength was his eloquent oratory.
And very cool as well.
And very cool and all that. And I think she's the worst speechmaker I've ever seen, because all she's ever done is hit on the Trump point. He says this, he says that, he's got this.
But
she doesn't deliver a message of, this is why you should vote for me.
Has she not been forced to do that by his campaign tactics?
Yeah, but she's not a good orator, is she?
No, and I think one of the challenges is actually her voice.
Yes.
And there's been a lot of work being done on trying to get her voice. It's quite harsh and it's got slightly nasal tones.
I think the biggest problem she had as well.
To listen to.
I think the biggest problem she had as well is that she isn't a very likeable candidate, because I think a lot of people perceive her to be not a very likeable person. And whether that's true or not isn't really the issue. And I think she's had to try and soften herself over the course of the campaign. I was just in a Rand Paul a little bit earlier on, who's a former candidate in 2012, libertarian guy, and he said, he would not normally be on Hillary Clinton's side. However, he talked about when she was US Senator for New York in Washington D.C. on the Capitol on Capitol Hill. He said she was a very hard worker. She worked incredibly well with people who didn't agree with her, and a lot of people actually respected her there, which was a surprise, because normally you think of her as this kind of slightly sort of hard, as you would call her, sort of a hard-faced woman who doesn't appear to have much soft corners.
Some of these friends of Hillary people are saying, if only you could see the funny side of Hillary, this chatty, engaging woman. I've never met anybody who I would, perceive as being less engaging and less chatty. I mean, one thing I've thought about is, I wonder what the staff at the White House are thinking about who they'd like most to walk through the front door, because Hillary was last there as First Lady. She now goes there as the boss, and Bill is consigned to the first husband role. And people think she's going to be a monster.
How much of how she has to present herself now do you think is a legacy of all of those early days when she was being Hillary Rodham, wasn't she,
Yes,
for a
she
long
was.
time?
Hillary
got
Rodham
absolutely
Clinton.
pilloried for not changing her name
Yeah.
to Clinton, and was sort of forced to do that, forced to remake her image because it wasn't playing well when Clinton was running for office. Was having to be very private
No, you're
about
absolutely
her
right.
public life, and how much of that has inhibited what she's now able to do.
And she's a woman nearly 70, and from a woman who's come from the background of equality changing over the decades, and now there are some younger women and younger feminists in America who don't think they're going to vote for her because they don't like the fact that she's basically been supportive of her husband all her career, which is a bit unfair, really.
It is a bit unfair. She has had to...
You've seen the time, by the way.
Yeah, I know. Don't worry about the time. She's been forced into change all her life. When she was a student at university and met Bill Clinton, first thing she was told when Clinton went into politics was, look, if you're going to be a political wife, you've got to start shaving your legs.
You've got to be a political wife with all that
exactly.
meant. Yeah.
She objected to that.
And she didn't shave her legs.
Yeah, exactly.
We're a quarter of an hour into the show, you're talking about whether Hillary Clinton shaves her legs.
I'm telling you about the history.
What sort of a man are you?
I'm telling you about the history of the woman who could be the first US president of the United States. I'm telling you, she has been dragged screaming into conformity all her life.
Well, it's going to be a fascinating night. Sandy's going to be in and out with us here. Mr. Parry is fighting through the pain. I don't want to give too much away, but he's going to be okay. We've got loads and loads of things coming up. We're going to go to the US Embassy. We're going to find out what's happening at the Clinton headquarters, the Trump headquarters, New York, Florida, Pennsylvania, California, Colorado, Arizona. It's all happening. This is the Two Mics. This is Talk Sport and Talk Radio. We are the Two Mics, and this is an election special. America decides. Is it going to be Trump? Is it going to be Clinton? Early indications are unclear, it would say. It's 68 to 57 at the moment. That doesn't really matter because 270 is the magic number. Of course, what we're going to be doing is bringing you the most important results from places like Florida, Pennsylvania, Virginia, which at the moment are all being told, we're all being told that they may well be too close to call. Pennsylvania exit poll, 50% to Clinton, Trump, 46%. If she can get Pennsylvania, I think she may be home and dry. But let's go to one of the places where it's all happening here in London, Mike, the US Embassy party, which is where all the great and the good are, of course. And Alex Dibble, our very own man, Talk Sport, Talk Radio correspondent, is there for us. Alex, a very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
So, I presume you've been working the crowds, as it were. Tell us a few of the famous names you've spotted in the crowd.
I had a brief chat about 5 minutes ago with Ian Hislop, who was mooching around the bar, and he said that was where he was planning to stay for most of the evening. So I'll try and grab him, and maybe you guys can have a chat with him at some point later on in the programme. Who else have I seen? I've seen the Liberal Democrat leader Tim Farron, one or two other people as well. But obviously plenty of Americans here as well, who some are just normal Americans.
Are there any Trump supporters there, or would you say that they're all kind of politico Hillary Clinton types?
Well, they've got an auditorium here, which is basically like a theatre, like a cinema screen, effectively, and that's absolutely chocker, and everyone's watching CNN. And as some of the states came through for Clinton, there was sort of ripples of applause that went round. Whenever a state came through for Trump, absolutely nothing. So I don't know whether that's just because there are Trump fans in the House, and they just don't really want to, clap their hands when a state comes through for him, or if there aren't any here. No, there are definitely one or two Trump supporters here, and hopefully I'll be able to grab one or two of them for you as well.
Now, Alex, you're coming to us from Grosvenor Square, are you, the American Embassy?
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Yeah, well, this is going to be the last one there, isn't it? Because they're knocking that building down quite soon and moving, aren't they?
They are indeed, yeah. I understand this is the only US embassy in the world that is not owned by the United States.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
So they own every other embassy, and they're renting this one. I believe
it's the Grosvenor Estates, isn't it? No, I think it's the Grosvenor Estates.
It's your mate, isn't it?
It is my mate, the Duke of Westminster, yeah.
Oh, he's dead, though, isn't he?
Yeah, well, he has. He's just died. But he's got a son who now becomes the Duke of Westminster, who effectively, I think, owns the American Embassy, which is quite exciting.
Absolutely right.
There's a chap called Robin Rennick, Alex, Lord Robin Rennick. Or Lord Rennick, and he was...
sure you know this guy's name?
Of course I know his name. And he was the he was the UK ambassador to America in 92, 93, when I was there doing the Clinton campaign.
Is this the guy you used to creep around and do his bidding for him?
Well, he used to occasionally, suggest a few points that I might like to put into my questioning of visiting politicians, which worked. So, Alex, if you see my pal Lord Rennick, send him my best.
I will indeed. I tell you what, I've actually been looking for him already.
Oh, yes.
Because I was told that you guys go way back. As it were.
Way back,
so
absolutely.
I tried to go around, but there's so many people here that I couldn't find him.
Well,
I will keep looking, and if I do find him, if I do spot him, I'm going to have to go up and say, what do I say? Hi, Robin, or hi, Lord.
No,
Reading?
you address him as Mike Parry would address him. Go, hello, my lord. You might remember a short bearded man that used to hang around with you in Washington back in the 90s.
That'll be my in-line.
And you used to know, whenever you used to ask him to do anything for you, he would do it happily.
I was the Daily Express correspondent in those days, Alex, and a major figure in the Washington scene. Does it seem a bit unreal, Alex, that you're there in a very social sort of setting and people are having a drink and, there's a lot of joviality, when in fact the issue that's being decided tonight is of such seriousness it could change the world quite dramatically?
Yeah, it's sort of bizarre dynamic. I know exactly what you mean. I think, though, the reason why people are sort of jovial, having a beer and, generally relaxing, is that they know there's absolutely nothing that can be done now. So, were this happening a week ago, I'm sure there'd be so much more tension because, the votes could still go different ways, people could still change their minds. But now it's sort of like, well, it's too late anyway, so why don't we just have a massive boozer, seems to be the general attitude here.
Yeah, well, funny enough, very similar to your attitude when you were Daily Express correspondent in Washington. Alex, we've got to leave it there.
Doesn't make them bad people.
No, it doesn't. We've got lots going on, including, of course, going backwards and forwards to the United States. Too close to call in Pennsylvania, too close to call in Florida. 68-57. One of the places we are going to be going backwards and forwards to, of course, Mike, is New York.
Yes.
And James Dean is the US business editor for The Times, is over there. He's at the Clinton party. Well, whether it's a party yet, we don't know.
No.
Let's find out what James can tell us. James, a very good morning to you. Welcome.
Hi, how you doing there?
Yeah, very well.
Party-wise, I'm not sure. It's not quite a party yet. There's lots of different results coming in from Florida at the moment, and it's kind of a neck and neck sort of thing. Obviously, Florida being one of the main battleground states, whoever takes that's going to have a good shot at winning the whole thing. Literally just before I came online with you guys. The guys on the TV are putting it at 48% each, so it's neck and neck. About 80-odd% of the votes been counted now, so it's really, really tight. Who knows who's going to win it? We don't know yet.
The biggest problem, I suppose, James, as well, is knowing the accuracy of the polls, isn't it? And we won't really know how accurate they are until some of the biggest states come in and the counts actually matter, because the polls have been wrong in the past, and with an election this close, you can't really rely on them, can you?
Absolutely. You have to wait until all the votes have been counted. I mean, in terms of the pre-polling for the EU referendum, we know how wrong it was there. So, yeah, we can only go on estimates at the moment. But either way, it's a tight race.
James, you're at the Clinton party, right? And I would like to know if anybody's talking about what the relationship might be between the new President Hillary Clinton and Mr. James Comey, the FBI director, who, of course, chucked a time bomb into the presidential race 10 days ago when he announced the reopening of the investigation into the allegations of Mrs. Clinton's misuse of emails.
Well, yes, it is a funny one, that one, and the timing was odd. I'm not going to go into conspiracy theories about what happened there, but yes, I'm not sure if she's going to be his biggest fan. Oh, sorry, I'm not sure if I'm not sure if she's going to be his biggest fan overall.
Exactly.
When, if she does get into office. Again, I mean, we don't know what's going to happen there. There's going to be a swathe of elections, in the federal government, depending on who's elected tonight. So maybe he's not safe. I don't know.
Well, on the other hand, he might have wiped his slate clean by actually closing the investigation down that he opened 10 days ago, 2 days before the election. It's all very odd, isn't it?
I think Mrs. Clinton might argue, though, that he may have swayed it. He may have swayed it in the days leading up to the election. That might have actually changed some people's minds.
Yes.
I mean, the email scandal has been an absolutely huge deal for Americans. I mean, Mr. Trump's been able to pretty much say what he wants the whole time, whether it's based on fact or fiction. But it's certainly the email scandal has always been Hillary Clinton's bugbear. So to launch that grenade with, about 10 or so days to go before the election. I mean, I know he closed it off a few days before, but a lot of people may have already voted by then. And
I totally agree. I think it was something which was very significant in bringing the polls much closer together.
Yes, absolutely right. Now, tell me something, James. It's not always easy to gauge these things by the way that the kind of advisors are looking, but we've been hearing over here that in the last few hours before the polls were closing, there was a definite kind of feel-good factor coming back into the Clinton camp. Have you seen any of that?
It seems to be swinging pretty much by the minute. Clinton might be going ahead in some. She was ahead in Florida up until I just came online, and they called it neck and neck. The lead in Florida has changed a few times now as the counties have been reporting all of their votes. So I think that whatever was a feel-good factor before is possibly now a kind of more muted, pensive sort of feeling as they wait for some solid numbers.
James, can I ask you something else as well? Mike Graham here, who's lived in Manhattan for 10 years, knows the city intimately, and I lived there for 2 or 3 years. Mike's suggesting, having spoken to some friends in New York tonight, that there is some fear of actual insurrection in parts of, midtown, downtown Manhattan if Donald Trump loses this presidential race. Are you aware of those sort of fears?
At the moment, I'll be totally honest, I am penned into the Clinton camp. So I think I'm feeling fairly safe down here. There certainly have been threats of violence by various groups. There's been, not quite in Manhattan, but there's certainly been threats by ultra-nationalists across the country to launch attacks. Who knows? I'm only speculating here completely, but who knows? Maybe some of the anger would be focused on Manhattan. Manhattan is part of New York. New York is a Democrat.
Well, it's the golden nugget, isn't it?
State. Absolutely. Yeah. So maybe there will be some anger, but I can tell you that the police presence is very high. There's a lot of men with guns. There's a lot of special service agents. There is a pretty strong police presence, you might say, in Manhattan at the moment. So if there is any violence, I'd imagine it would be met with fairly severe force.
Yeah, and resistance. Yeah.
James, listen, great that we were able to talk to you. We'll come backwards and forwards to you if we may. James Dean, US business editor for The Times. He's at the Clinton HQ over in New York City, which is exactly where Trump's HQ is as well. She, of course, a former New York senator, and Trump, of course, a famous New York billionaire. It's all happening in New York City. It's all happening here at TalkSport as well, because we're bringing you this all the way through the night until 6 a.m. This is TalkSport. We are the Two Mics. This is an election special.
Long lines and people waiting in long lines for more than an hour.
She's better than Trump, so I voted for her.
Donald Trump is such a racist and bigot. Like the whole wall building with the Mexicans, his comments, it just seems like such an ignorant man. I would not want that person to run our country.
So many people are counting on the outcome of this election, what it means for our country, and I'll do the very best I can if I'm fortunate enough to win today.
I just went for the lesser of the two evils.
Mr. Trump has, I think, more issues. The temperament, the things he said, I can't get past any of that.
I voted for Trump. I think we need a change. We need someone that's not a politician.
None of us want to wake up Wednesday morning and wish we had done more, right? And years from today, when your kids and grandkids ask what you did in 2016 when everything was on the line, you'll be able to say you voted for a stronger, fairer, better America.
You need to watch the states of Florida, North Carolina, Ohio, and Michigan. If Trump loses any one of those 4 states, the night's basically over.
The world's most dishonest people, the media, they are not happy. No, they're not happy. They're saying, what's going on? Today we're going to win the great state of Michigan, and we are going to win back the White House.
And here we are, proudly representing the most dishonest people in the world. Myself, Mike Parry, Sandy Waugh here as representatives of the media. Donald Trump, famous for exaggerating, of course, almost everything. He's exaggerated his way to very close campaign with against Hillary Clinton. It's too close to call in loads of different places. Here's Sandy Waugh with an update.
Yeah, polls closing in about half of the US states in the race between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump to get to the White House. Exit polls suggesting Donald Trump has won in Ohio. Now, that has picked the last 13 presidents, but Hillary Clinton tipped to win North Carolina. That's another important swing state. Both candidates in New York City awaiting that official result. We're expecting those a little later on this morning. Among the latest declarations, Alabama declaring for Donald Trump. Arkansas, we're seeing being projected as a Donald Trump win as well. Remember, we're looking for the 270 number. That is effectively the winning post with these electoral college votes. At the moment, 68 Hillary Clinton's 66, Donald Trump. American media reporting long queues at many polling stations, pointing to a high turnout. Also reports of one set of booths in California being put into lockdown after shots were fired nearby. We understand 2 people have been injured. Already court battles. A judge has rejected a request by the Trump campaign for records from an area in Las Vegas to be preserved and the names of officials to be made public. Concerns there about whether there have been irregularities. And security stepped up in New York. Officials have parked heavy trucks filled with sand outside Trump Tower. The aim is apparently to block if there's any attempt there. More than 5,000 police drafted into Midtown Manhattan, where Trump and Clinton are both preparing for an election night, as indeed, of course, are we right here.
Absolutely right. Thank you very much indeed, Sandy. Incredible scenes over in New York, really, aren't they?
Absolutely. Just on the exaggeration, Mike, I mean, another exaggeration point is his own personal wealth.
Yeah.
Now, Trump has actually said on the hustings, as he's gone around the country, I will be the wealthiest man ever to enter the White House.
Yes.
Well, maybe or maybe not, because nobody quite knows the extent of Donald Trump's wealth. Now, mostly speaking, when a man puts himself up as President of the United States of America, the first thing he does is present his own tax returns.
Yeah.
It's bona fide. That's what you do.
Right.
Now, Mr. Trump never has. And the reason for that is not because most people, some observers, some political observers say he's not trying to hide the fact that he's not paid tax and he's done anything crooked. He's trying to hide his true wealth because he is happy for people to believe that he's a billionaire 10 times over.
Right.
And yet
And
we
he
all
may
know,
not be.
we all know from 30 years' experience, going back to when we started in America, that like all businessmen, and you could include Richard Branson in this, some businesses that you start work and some don't. That's the nature of being an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
But some people think that the balance of the businesses that Mr. Trump has made work and those that haven't doesn't necessarily make him a billionaire 10 times over.
He does have an interesting relationship with the truth. I mean, when he went to vote today in New York, for example, you know, because New York, generally speaking, is a Democrat town, you know, he gets out of his car and there is a massive amount of, protection for him. I mean, people
30 vehicles accompanied him to the polling booth.
And, you know, because there are genuine fears of whatever it is that could happen, you know. But, you know, as he walked in, there was a huge amount of booing and jeering. We can hear that a little bit later on.
Yes.
And he walks in and they ask him, how are you doing, Mr. Trump? And he says, you know, the reaction here is great. And the reaction on the outside was not great. But anyway, let's talk to Alex Sundstrom, who's with Republicans overseas. He's at the US Embassy party. Alex, very good morning to you. Are you one of those Trump-supporting Republicans, or are you one of those who wishes it was somebody else?
Well, maybe both. I voted for Donald Trump, and I hope he wins the election. I'll say that.
Okay. Well, what do you think he's going to? How do you think it's going so far?
You know, it's really hard to say. It's funny, like these prediction markets. You know, the people bet on the outcome, and those have just been bouncing around like crazy. I mean, they were down to almost nothing when a lot of the Florida vote was counted, and now it's back up a bit. It's very uncertain, I think, at the moment.
Okay. And as far as the way that I was asking our reporter Alex there a little bit earlier how the reaction was to Trump winning various states, I mean, do you feel in a bit of a minority there? Because aside from anything else, whether you're a supporter of Trump or not, you know, he represents the outsiders, doesn't he? He represents a new way of governing the country. He keeps saying that the system is rigged. He keeps saying that, you know, it's time for the people to take back the corrupt political class. I mean, presumably most of the people there at the party from the American side are part of that corrupt American class, as he would call it.
Yeah, no, it's the class I belong to. This was the reason I supported Brexit, and this is the reason I support Trump, is that I think the current global economy has been very good for all the people at this party who come from a certain stratum of society, and like it's not so good for the people that are struggling to find work. And so I think the contrast between Hillary Clinton's vision of open trade and open borders and Donald Trump's nationalism, protector of the working class, I think is very similar to what you saw in Brexit. And I think his is the right, corrective to the globalist trends that we've been experiencing.
Alex, as a Trump supporter, can I put this to you? Mr. Trump is playing the Patriot card, which Republican nominees and presidents always have done, of course. But on this occasion, it's a different sort of patriotism, and I think it challenges the whole status of American Constitution as Republicans have read it in the past, and that is on two particular issues. One, the Americans have always welcomed immigrants into their country. That's been put into question by Mr. Trump. And the other one is absolute religious tolerance across the United States of America, another thing he's questioned. Would you agree with me that is a shift from previous Republican policy?
Well, I don't know that it's true that, I mean, you say Americans have always welcomed immigrants, I think, and it's true in general, but I think there's a question as to the amount of immigration, and I think it's,
it's a very big country, and you've had to fill it for 100 years.
It's a pretty big country, but this has also been a position taken by the left. I mean, Cesar Chavez in the 1960s, the founder of the United Farm Workers, was himself very anti-illegal immigration because it hurt the wages of his farm workers, of his people in his union. So I think there's always this tension between wanting to be open to the rest of the world, which I think most Americans are, and recognizing that there's a lot of Americans going without work right now. There are 3.5 million Americans who drive trucks. What happens to them when the truck is automated? Do we really need a bunch of additional low-wage workers competing with them for those jobs? I think it's obviously a tough challenge it's a tough challenge, but I think Trump at least would look out for the American worker.
But then again, people who would challenge that argument would say without a lot of illegal immigrant workers, a lot of American society would collapse, including some very palatial homes in the Washington, D.C. Beltway area.
Well, I think that's from the perspective of people that want cheap labor. Yeah, they should vote for Hillary Clinton. I think that the idea that the world will collapse if you have to pay people a bit more, pay them a living wage, I think is that's certainly something that a lot of people at this party might think. But I think there again, there's that tension, right?
The polls have shown, Alex, that people's main concern in this election has actually been the economy, as ever. And immigration is down around about fourth or fifth most important thing behind terrorism and a couple of other bits and pieces. Do you not find it a bit ironic that you've got this billionaire guy who's been bankrupt quite a lot of times, hasn't paid many of his creditors, closed down many casinos that he opened up because they didn't work, made a lot of people unemployed, is somehow being seen as the champion of the working class?
Well, I think he's in a position where he can do that, right? I mean, he would say that he himself has benefited tremendously from the system, and he's now wants to be a traitor to his class and do something on behalf of the American worker. I think that's in a sense, he's the only person that really can do it. If you think about this election, it costs about $3 billion to run, the total between the two candidates. So table stakes are really either you get a lot of money from the establishment if you're Hillary Clinton, or that you happen to be a billionaire with a lot of celebrity like Donald Trump. There's not a whole lot of people that could be doing what he's doing right now.
No, exactly right. And as far as the sort of the main thing that you're looking for tonight, Alex, I mean, obviously we're waiting for Florida, which seems to be going backwards and forwards every time we check the screen. Pennsylvania as well, Virginia. I mean, what would you say will be the first kind of real indicator tonight, and at what time do you expect it?
Well, if Trump can win Michigan, that's going to be a little later maybe. He has to win Florida. I mean, Florida is like a gateway state. If he doesn't win that, he's going to have to win Michigan and Ohio. I mean, I think he really needs to sort of pull through in these Rust Belt states where people have been battered by deindustrialization. He's got to win those because that's his sort of I think strongest opportunity. If he doesn't do that, then I think it's going to be a very I think all in he probably has like a 20% chance of winning right now.
Yeah, sure. Okay. I mean, actually, he must win Florida to have any chance at all. But actually, Hillary Clinton could still win if she loses Florida, couldn't she?
That's right. I think so. Just going this markets going in would say she has about a 60% chance. She has an 80% chance of winning the election. 60% chance she wins Florida, and this thing all ends early. And then if she doesn't, then it's probably a coin toss, and this goes very late into the night.
Okay. Well, Alex, listen, thank you very much indeed.
Much.
Alex there from Republicans Abroad. We'll be going backwards and forwards to the US Embassy, of course, throughout the course of the night. Let me just read you a few tweets out because we are getting a lot of tweets in. Forgive us if we don't get to a lot of them because it's obviously a very busy night here. Here's one from Zobon. He says, Porky, the Clinton camp is very confident about Florida. I'm not quite sure how he knows that.
No, I don't know
whether he's in the Clinton camp. I don't think he is. And here's one from G. O'Hara, who says, nonsense, Porky. Hillary is a good orator. People in the north of Ireland love her for her work after the Troubles.
Sure, no problem, and I accept that. But what I'm saying is she doesn't deliver the eloquence of delivery of speech that Obama did and that Billy Clinton, her husband, did.
Yeah, indeed. I interviewed her once outside a school classroom. I'll tell you that story
A school
later.
Classroom,
Sure, yeah. Jason says, Hillary has been dragged screaming into shaving her legs. Am I listening to CNN? No. It's got to be Porky on the two mics.
Well, I'm telling you, that's it. I was a bit of a student of political history in America when I was there, just to find out what was going on, because I lived in Washington, D.C., and she was a absolutely fervent feminist in her younger years.
Yeah.
I mean, have you seen pictures of her when she first met Bill Clinton? Clinton.
I have
Huge sort of bottle, bottom glasses and that sort of stuff. Her hair all over the place, no makeup.
Well, you're now
and that kind
attacking
of
her
stuff.
for the way she looks.
I'm not attacking her at all for the way she looks. What
Shocking.
I'm saying is that she decided that if she wanted to become an operator in the political world, I mean, you remember her famous quote when they were campaigning? She said, "Oh, what do you think I'm going to be? Tammy Wynette, stand by your man," and all this kind of stuff.
Would you rather I was home baking cookies? I think was the line,
and then conveniently arranged to have a picture of herself baking some cookies at home just to prove that, look, I can be a political wife.
No,
so
listen.
I think she's rebelling against all that.
She's always struggled with the image makers because
Absolutely.
her the image that she's now presenting is probably not really quite her.
Yeah.
Do you know what else I've done for you tonight?
What have you done?
I brought in a picture of me and Bill Clinton together.
Have you?
Yeah.
Excellent. Well done.
I thought I'd show that to you.
Why?
Well, because I wondered if you might have brought yours in.
No, I never said that I had a picture of me and Bill Clinton together.
Oh, didn't you?
No, I said I'd met Bill Clinton on a number of
I see.
occasions, but actually I never stood there and posed and said, Mr. Clinton or Billy, let's have a picture taken.
Right.
No.
That's not like you.
No, you're confusing that with a picture of me and Joan Collins.
Right. You did pose with her, though.
I did, yes.
Where's that picture?
Well, why would you want to see that? What's that got to do with the presidential election in the United States?
Election, but
Joan Collins has been there a few times, and I got her seat on the first class flight back from Los Angeles. If that's any connection with tonight's election,
by the way,
which it's not.
And don't think just because it's election night, I'm not going to let you get away with that commentary on Roy Keane's suggestions earlier that Everton players are all swinging the lead. This is Talk Sport.
We will build a great wall along the southern border. And Mexico will pay for the wall. 100%. I will be the greatest jobs president that God ever created. We cannot afford to be so politically correct anymore.
Donald J. Trump is calling for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States
until our country's representatives can figure out what the hell is going on. My plan will begin with safety at home. Safe neighborhoods, secure borders, and protection from terrorism. I make this promise. We will make America strong again. We will make America proud again. We will make America safe again. And we will make America great again. God bless you and good night. I love you.
For many people, of course, Donald Trump has been a remarkable phenomenon. I mean, he calls himself a phenomenon because he was the guy from The Apprentice. He wasn't just a billionaire, so he does have quite good presentation skills. I watched his speech very early hours of yesterday morning in Grand Rapids, Michigan, where he was basically talking about putting a 35% tax on any American car manufacturer who moved manufacture of those cars to Mexico, which they've all done, in order to bring them back into the country. He says, I'm going to tax them 35%. And he does come across as believable on some of the financial stuff, regardless of what you and I have both said about some of the exaggerated kind of claims.
Yes.
But, I mean, he is almost playing the role of the president. I mean, it's almost as if he's in a movie, I think, don't you?
Well, I think Donald Trump, all his life, ever since he was brought up in a very affluent household and given money at a young age by his father to go and try out his entrepreneurial skills, has actually been playing the part of somebody else, i.e. tycoon.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. The Donald.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's what Ivana, his first wife, called him, the Donald.
Yeah.
And I used to go down to LaGuardia Airport, we were flying off somewhere to do a job somewhere, and you see planes coming in, the Eastern Airlines, were called Trump.
The Trump shuttle. Well, he bought the Trump shuttle, didn't he?
Exactly.
Again, he bought it from Eastern Airlines because they went bankrupt.
Exactly.
So he bought it at a basement price.
Yeah.
And then he in turn sold it on somewhere else.
Exactly. But then he became, he's always sort of played the part of what's my next role as a tycoon, if you see what I mean.
Right.
And usually managed to to play that part for 18 months or so before he moved on to something else, or he went bust.
Well, we've heard what the mood is in the Clinton camp, in the HQ in New York City. We're going to go now to Gabby Morangello, who's a reporter of the DC Examiner. She's at Trump HQ in Manhattan. Let's find out from Gabby what the mood is there. Gabby, a very good morning to you. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So, we've spoken to some friends of ours over in the Clinton camp. James Dean, the business editor for The Times, he says it's a bit too early to say how people are feeling. It's moving backwards and forwards. I mean, the Donald Trump campaign has been kind of fired up by adrenaline, by sort of, much more rowdiness, I suppose you might say. What's the mood where you are, Gabby?
Well, really, everyone right now is on the edge of their seats as we wait to see what the projection will be in Florida. I mean, this race comes down to that state. Donald Trump does not have a path to an electoral college victory if he doesn't win Florida. And, over the last 30 minutes or so, we've been seeing it swing back and forth. Right now in that state, you have about 4.7 million voters casting their ballots for either candidate, and we still have a number of Republican precincts that need to come in the Panhandle, as well as an overwhelming and unexpected turnout among Latinos, which is something that would benefit Hillary Clinton. So until we know where Florida stands in the Electoral College, whether it's going to go to Donald Trump or to Hillary Clinton, I think everybody here and at the Hillary Clinton election night party are going to be on the edge of their seats.
I'm sure they are, Gabby. Now, you say you've got all eyes on Florida. Am I right in thinking the 4 key states are Florida, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and North Carolina? Now, you've made it absolutely clear that if Mr. Trump doesn't get Florida, he's got a problem. Hillary can still win if she loses Florida. What are the eyes being cast on those other 3 states, and where do we stand there?
Well, Ohio and North Carolina are too close to call right now. We're still waiting for polls to close in Pennsylvania. But one thing that's actually interesting is Virginia. I mean, Hillary Clinton was supposed to be running away with Virginia. Her running mate, Tim Kaine, is a senator from Virginia, a very popular one at that. And right now it's a close race there. They haven't been able to, none of the major networks here have been able to call Virginia. And it's at a point where they were expected to. So keep an eye on Virginia. Again, Ohio's too close to call. We're still waiting on Pennsylvania. But once Florida's called, if it's called in the next hour or so, we'll know whether or not Donald Trump still has a path forward.
I mean, presumably one of the reasons Hillary chose the Virginia governor as her running mate was that he was meant to deliver his own state.
Exactly.
Well, the Virginia senator, to be clear. But yes, absolutely. I mean, as I mentioned, Tim Kaine is a popular senator in Virginia, and the fact that the race is so close right now says something about, Donald Trump's appeal and his enthusiasm among the coal miners in Virginia and among those white working class voters who carried him to a victory in the primary.
Mm-hmm. Now then, you've been at the Trump HQ for most of the day, I would imagine. The interpretation by Mr. Trump of the greeting he got when he arrived for his vote this afternoon, when he went and voted, which is near to where you are now, was very different to what we saw from the TV. Mr. Trump is an eternal optimist, isn't he? When people were catcalling and booing outside, he's saying, "Oh, what a great welcome." I mean, this is fairly typical of the guy, isn't it?
It is. It's, something he's shooken off quite often throughout this campaign is not so warm greetings at his various events, and that's what we saw earlier this morning. He was his motorcade traveled just around the corner from Trump Tower, where he and his wife Melania cast their votes. And he was greeted by a mix of onlookers who supported him and also by people who were booing him. So he just, waved. He bought a cookie from a young boy who was at the polling station, cast his ballot, and got back to Trump Tower, where he was said to be preparing his speeches for this evening, either a victory speech or a concession speech. Well,
he would actually even consider a concession speech.
I mean, one of the things I was told a bit earlier, Gabby, was that if he does lose, they're not even sure he'll turn up. I mean, have you been hearing that as well?
No, I don't think that that's something that's going to happen. I mean, we've heard rumors all along this campaign that Donald Trump was going to drop out before the primary, that he was going to decide not to participate in the presidential debates against Hillary Clinton, that he was going to drop out after that Access Hollywood audio tape broke. And every single time he defied those predictions. And I think that tonight, no matter what the outcome is, he will show up. He will graciously accept the results of the election. and give either a victory speech or a concession speech.
Okay, so that's if it happens tonight. We don't know what's going to happen tonight.
Right.
If that happens, what does the future then hold for Mr. Trump in his role in American life? Because he wasn't a politician before this election campaign started, but he's now has to be recognised as a very serious politician post the election campaign, even if he loses it.
Absolutely. I think that's where most of this uncertainty lies, is in what happens if Donald Trump does not win. Where does he go? Does he return to the world of real estate and to continue to build his business empire, or does he carry on this movement that he's said that he's built? I mean, he loves to tout that on the campaign trail. He's often said that he has this silent majority and that he's built something that is, a phenomenon that Americans have never seen before. So it's going to be interesting to see whether he is seen as the Republican standard bearer going forward, or whether Republicans reject him immediately if he does end up in a loss tonight and move forward, try to change the party and shift it away from the rhetoric and the campaign that he's run.
Yeah, it will be fascinating.
Gabby, listen, thank you so much for joining us. Hopefully we'll be able to come back to you throughout the course of the night. That's Gabby Marangiello, who's over at the Trump HQ in New York. Talk Radio's very own Sam Delaney is also over in the US of A. He's been doing the Drive Time show from there in DC for the last couple of days. Sam, welcome to the show.
Hi, both of you.
Yeah, hi, Sam.
So, I mean, there you are. I don't know if you've been involved in an American election before. Apparently, in Washington, D.C., that is the seat of all corruption, according to Donald Trump. They must be quaking in their boots at the moment in case the system's all going to be overthrown.
Well, it's certainly very pro-Hillary here. I mean, this is always... I mean, it's not really worth much in the Electoral College. I think it's like 3 seats in the Electoral College because it's not really a state, the District of Columbia. But every single person you meet is very pro-Hillary. They're as perplexed here about the appeal of Donald Trump as we are back in the UK. So it's almost like it feels like a little country in itself here. I'm in a fascinating place this evening. It's called Martin's Tavern in Georgetown, which is a sort of posh little suburb of Washington. And it's a very oldie-worldy, sort of almost styled like an English pub, but it's been here for many years. They've served every president going back all the way to Kennedy. There's a booth right next to where we're sitting at our table eating our steaks right now, which is where JFK proposed to Jackie. And they've got a special plaque commemorating that, so it's steeped in history.
I bet a few years later, Marilyn Monroe might have visited him in that booth as well, Sam, because...
very probable.
That was the sort of politics he did. What's the temperature in D.C., by the way?
It's quite warm.
Warm.
Okay. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but I'm standing outside the bar right now, and I reckon it's about 12 degrees, something like that. It's quite pleasant and balmy, really.
OK, people will be out in Georgetown then, just the other side of the Potomac.
Why are you asking about the weather?
Because it's relevant to the turnout, the people inside the Beltway.
The polls are closed there.
Inside the Beltway, Sam, it is. You're absolutely right. It's a different part of America, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I mean, just across the water. I mean, I can practically see the river with the bridge connecting us to Virginia from where I'm stood right now. And, of course, things are much closer there. So it just goes to show this is like a little island in itself.
It is.
I think, Washington's sort of very similar to New York, I think, in terms of the culture and the people here.
Sam, listen, we'll come back to you very, very shortly throughout the course of the night. Sam Delaney, Talk Radio's presenter over there in Washington, D.C., the heartbeat, of course, of the political movement and the political class in America, which is
very liberal.
Well, it's not so much liberal, it's just very establishment, isn't it?
Exactly,
I mean, there's plenty of Republicans there. I mean, that's the other thing that people haven't really talked about yet is, what the Pennsylvania result will mean, what the Senate will end up looking like. If Trump gets in, will he be able to do anything? Will it all be, steamrolling through? We shall see. Lots more to come. This is TalkSport. Good morning, I'm Mike Graham, he's Mike Parry. You're listening to the Two Mikes election special on TalkSport and Talk Radio. It's a night of history in the making as America decides whether to elect a president who has never held political office or served in the armed forces, or their first ever woman leader. Here's Hillary.
So many people are counting on the outcome of this election, what it means for our country, and I'll do the very best I can if I'm fortunate enough to win today.
Donald Trump's convinced he's going to storm the White House, but has he done enough?
Everybody's talking about the record turnout at the polls. It's amazing, but please go to the polls. We have a movement going on. They've never seen anything like it. Go to the polls and vote. We're going to make America great again.
It's going to be a night of drama. We've already seen so many states right now too close to call. Things are running a little bit later than they were. But from sea to shining sea, from California to New York, by the end of this show, the world will be a very, very different place. You're listening to the Two Mikes Election Special with me, Mike Graham, and Mike Parry. Mr. Parry, we've been watching all sorts of fun and games going on. It's currently 97-124 in Trump's favour. It doesn't really matter what the figures are at the moment. We're still waiting for an awful lot of results to come in, of course, and the very, very important results. And Sandy Waugh is here to help us all the way through the night. Sandy, what's the state of play?
Yeah, no major surprises so far. I suppose the story at the moment is what we don't know that we thought we would, if that makes sense. Yes. There were several states that were assumed to be pretty solid territory for Hillary Clinton. So Pennsylvania and Virginia were thought to be, according to the opinion polls, a fairly clear margin. And we were thinking we might have had those decisions by now. And the fact that we haven't, OK, you can't read anything necessarily into any of this except that we know there's been really huge turnout and therefore there are obviously more votes to be counted than they thought there might be. And this is taking a bit longer. But the fact that these were thought to be solid Democrat territories and we haven't heard in from them yet. It may mean something, may not. As you say, it's all about these
figured
key
out,
states,
Sandy, whether the huge turnout is favouring one side or the other?
We don't know. And one of the reasons we don't know is that in some of the states you can actually register to vote today, and we're hearing of hundreds of people turning out to do this, and they're obviously completely off the radar. No one knows who they support. They haven't been measured, they haven't been spoken to.
So they wouldn't be registered Democrats or Republicans?
Absolutely no way to tell. Certainly one of the things we can say appears to be happening is there was a fear that the nature of the campaign, it's been particularly negative and personal from both sides, might have turned people off. What's interesting is it appears to almost have had the opposite effect, that people have turned out and what would seem to be in large numbers to make sure they don't get one particular individual. It's negative voting in some ways. Whether we think that's a good thing or a bad thing, well, only time will tell.
And the key, of course, for all of this analysts that have been looking at the numbers and crunching those numbers is which groups of people will vote for which candidate. Where, you know, we've heard also of a particular phenomena, which I was going to get into a bit later on in the night. We might as well introduce it now, where an awful lot of white-collar, blue-collar workers, for example, who are married, who will vote for Trump, their wives will tell their husbands they're going to vote for Trump, but when they get in the booth, they might not do it because they don't like his stance on women.
Yes, the way that the American pundits I've been hearing are describing it is white, non-college educated.
Yeah,
that seems to be the expression, and they're saying there's no insult intended by that because, of course, part of the American dream is supposedly you don't need a college education, you can make yourself. Yeah. And in some ways, that's what Trump epitomises.
But some white college educated are pledging themselves to Trump as well. That's the whole point.
And similarly with the Latino vote, which has been said to be very, very big in this election, they won't all be voting for Hillary.
No, and the thing is, there's this phenomenon, talking about phenomenons, where the Latino vote of those already in America may well support Trump's view that they don't want any more. Because, of course, they might say that, you know, we've got a nice life here, we've achieved the American dream, that can only be watered down if more and more people keep flowing in across the border. So there are all sorts of eventualities. And what you hit on there, Mike, about, you know, the wives of the blue-collar workers not telling us what they're voting for, that's called the silent majority.
Yeah.
And we had a silent majority.
It's called the Penthouse Nation, apparently.
It is, absolutely. But the silent majority we experienced in this country, Sandy, at the last general election here.
Under-reporting by in particular by Conservative voters who weren't prepared to say to the pollsters that's what I was going to do, but then turn out and voted for all sorts of very complicated social reasons. People weren't prepared to say that.
And I suppose, conversely, in Trump's favour, there's going to be people who might not, in certain circumstances, wish to admit to voting for Trump. Because their friends are standing around them and they might not want to be seen as, bigoted or racist or in any way kind of Trump-like.
Sure. Here's a thought which I'll put to both of you, right? The American people have already broken through a massive barrier and voted for an American president of 8 years standing from an African-American background, OK? That was a major, major change in the whole psyche and think American people. Are they now going to say, well, we smashed one barrier down 2 elections ago, We're now going to smash another one down. We're going to have the first woman president.
I think that might have been a factor were it not for the other issues around Hillary Clinton and the fact that she has that track record in office. There are the accusations about the way she's behaved. There are parts of the feminist movement that would say she's very anti-feminist because of what happened in a relationship with Bill Clinton. And so there's a real negativity around her as a person that may be more of an influence, if you like, than whether or not she's female, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely right. Well, Sandy, it's going to be fascinating. We'll come back to you very shortly. As soon as we know anything, of course, Sandy will come and tell us. And Hillary and Trump are currently fighting it out, 130 to 97 at the moment in Trump's favour. So, I mean, why are you looking at me with that kind of pained expression on your face?
I'm not actually, but Sandy said something great there, which... She said a lot of voters have turned up today who are off the radar. Well, the last time we heard the expression radar,
Bob.
It was Bobcat Bob said, there's a lot of people on my radar. So maybe Bobcat Bob spotted them before anybody else.
Well, it's very possible. His state, New Jersey, by the way, went for Clinton, I believe. That's the way it's supposed to be going. However, now we've got another guest to talk to, Bill Barnard, a Democratic commentator, American political historian. Bill, welcome to the show. Thank you very much for joining us.
Good to be with you.
Now, I've got a very interesting question for you, which I haven't been able to ask anyone else. I'm hoping you're going to be able to answer it for me. If, in the event that Hillary Clinton wins and Donald Trump decides he wants to challenge the election result, what exactly could he do?
Well, there's several different things. In certain states, if the vote is close enough, within 0.5%, for example, there's an automatic recount, and that's by state law. In other states, it's a much more complicated procedure. You would have to allege fraud, and you would have to be able to show that fraud was of such a character and such a dimension that it was it determined the way the vote actually went. That's a much more difficult task, and it'll vary by state. I mean, there's already one case that's been brought in Nevada. You know, they were voting in early voting, and they were keeping the polls open because the lines were so long. Well, actually, that's according to law. If you are in line to vote, even though it's past the deadline for the poll to close, you have a right to vote.
And that was thrown out, wasn't it, by a judge?
I assumed that it was. I had not seen the latest. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Bill, on the situation regarding the least attractive of two candidates, who is turning out to be the most attractive of the least attractive?
Well, if you look at the internals of the polling that has been done in the exit polls, it's true that Trump's unfavorables are higher than Hillary's. Both are high and historically high. But that's a curious thing in regard to her anyway, because her reputation with the American public has gone up and down like a roller coaster. You know, for 20 out of the 23 last years, when Gallup has done their poll, Hillary Clinton has been mentioned as the number one admired female in the country. And when she ran for the Senate in New York, she won narrowly. But then when she ran for re-election, she got over 2/3 of the vote. She worked across the aisle with Senator McCain, for example, and had a great deal of admiration among the Republicans. So when she's in office and doing a job, she tends to get high marks. It's when she's running for office that the scandal machine cranks up, and you see all this smoke. They try to convince people that there's some fire there, but it turns out to be dry ice, and it just sort of dissipates, and there's no there.
Well, you say that when she's in office, Bill, but I mean, she did actually suffer quite a dip in popularity when she was the acting Secretary of State, didn't she, for a number of reasons, you know, issues on foreign policy, and then, of course, there were always murmurs about the email situation whilst she was Secretary of State. She wasn't terribly popular, was she?
No, that actually, most of that comes afterwards. When she actually left, her favorables in the polls were in the high 60s.
Okay.
Much of that comes a bit later.
Okay, fine.
And as far as the historical perspective on what is generally being described as the most kind of bad-mannered and ill-natured kind of competition that's ever been held in the United States. I mean, a lot of people talk about the nation divided now, that there is this massive gulf between the sort of the liberal types on the coasts and the working people in the middle. And that's going to have to be addressed by whoever wins.
Absolutely, and it's going to be very difficult to heal that. Now, we have had difficult elections in the past. I was at the Democratic Convention in 1968 in Chicago, so I know what it's like to go through that kind of election where the country was torn by civil rights in the recent past, and then more recently in '68 by Vietnam. So we have those kinds of very bitter, very divisive elections. We've had those in the past. But this one has sunk to a level of crassness and of personal animosity and vitriol that I haven't seen in my lifetime, and I've been around a pretty long time in American politics.
OK, and Bill, one final question, please. Is the fact that she is married to Bill Clinton a plus or a negative for her as an independent candidate running for the White House?
I think it cuts both ways. I mean, Clinton remains one of the most admired politicians in the country as a whole, though he suffered a little bit, as you might expect, during the course of the campaign. On the other hand, there are some who would say that, you know, she's there where she is in part because of who she married, not because of her own merits, as great as those merits might very well be. So I think it cuts both ways.
OK.
Bill, thank you very much
Thank you
indeed.
very much.
That's Phil Bernard, Democratic commentator, American political historian, talking from that US Embassy party.
Yeah, sure.
Now, here's an idea for you, just to make things interesting, or even more interesting.
Yes.
Woodenhead suggests that we should do a poll here at Talk Sport as to who people would vote for president between you and I.
That's a very good idea.
What do you think about that?
I think it's a very good idea.
So we put that vote out?
I would put that vote out right now, and let's set up some sort of mechanic to make sure we get an accurate reflection.
Well, it'll be a Twitter poll, as we could always do.
Yeah. But I'd like to see the mechanic before we set it up, because you load these polls. We've had them in the past on many occasions.
Well, winners and losers.
Winners and losers.
I mean, a lot of people have drawn comparisons between you and Donald Trump, because somebody said earlier on Twitter today,
Ridiculous.
You can just imagine Trump turning up at the ballot box saying, "Vote Trump, vote often," and then when he loses, he's going to complain it's been gerrymandered.
Well, no. At least I've got evidence to prove my claims on that one.
Indeed. OK, now, coming up, we're going to speak to Eric McElroy, who's a comedian. We're going to have updates from Sandy Wall. Chris Ando's going to be here. Ask Porky coming up a little bit later on as well. This is TalkSport. This is a Two Mics election special. It's a very, very exciting night. It's 104 to 130 in Trump's favour at the moment. 270 electoral college votes needed to win. We're just waiting, really, for Florida and for Pennsylvania. Trump has won Kansas, Texas, North Dakota, South Dakota, Arkansas and Wyoming. Lots and lots of things are going on. We're going backwards and forwards to New York City. Right now, though, we're going to talk to a man originally from Seattle who now is based here in the UK. He's a comedian by the name of Eric McElroy. Eric, a very good morning. Welcome to the show.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Not at all.
Great to be here.
You're seeing this, I suppose, through slightly different eyes than we are. Despite the fact that you're here, you obviously care deeply what's happening back home in the US of A. What are you making of it?
Yeah, it's closer. I mean, kind of hoping for I'm on the Hillary side of the fence. I just left the Democrats Abroad party, and people were in a fairly good mood. But it'd be nice to put one of the big states away. It'd be nice to see Florida or Pennsylvania shut down onto the Hillary side of things, and it's close like they thought it would be.
Yeah, absolutely. And what about what happens afterwards, really? Because I suppose, while we wait for these big states to come in and see whether the polls are actually right and whether they're too close to call. I mean, more concern from guys like yourselves' point of view is how does it all pan out at the end afterwards?
Yeah, I mean, it's been so heated, and people have been at each other's throats. And I mean, I try and be generally optimistic and think maybe this is a fever that will break at this at the stage, a lance that will be boiled, and that things will get a little bit better after this. I'm probably one of the few people left in America that thinks that could happen, because it has been so heated and so angry.
Is that boiling a lance thing? Is that some comedic thing?
Yeah.
You mean lancing the boil?
Yeah, boiling a lance. Oh yeah, exactly. I'm not normally trying to be witty this time of the morning.
Oh really?
Night,
don't worry. Don't worry about it. It's a very serious show. It's very serious.
I was going to say, such a funny guy. You're telling jokes in your sleep, so to speak. What's the position regarding Hillary Clinton if she doesn't make it? Is that the end of Hillary Clinton forever? She spent 24 years, hasn't she, getting to where she is now, with a hiatus of 16 years in between, if you see what I mean. So what happens if it all goes wrong tonight?
And she's been running for president for about 600 years, so you've got to add that in there as well.
I mean, you're a comedian, so you may have even invented the original joke about Hillary and Bill driving in a car, down through Washington and all that, and they stop for gas, and Bill says to Hillary, "Aren't you glad, darling, you're not married to that guy who's pumping gas?" And of course, Hillary says, "If I was married to that guy pumping gas, Bill, he'd be the president of the United States, not you."
Yeah, I'm not surprised. Yeah, she was named as somebody who would be the first woman president of the United States in the 1970s. 70s, I think, by Time magazine. So this isn't something unexpected in a lot of ways. I mean, she's 69 years old. You would think that this would be the moment where she realizes finally that America just does not like her, in spite of running against the worst candidate humanly imaginable.
This is the question.
But she's lucky, isn't she? She's sorry, Mike, to interrupt. She's lucky that she's running against the worst Republican candidate in history, because if there's anybody, who was actually popular and liked on the Republican side, she'd be wiped out by now.
Yeah, but luckily there was no one.
No, exactly.
But that's one of the questions I was going to get to, that many people on this side of the Atlantic have said, is it really so desperate in political times in America that these are the two best candidates for the top job in the world? Because it seems astonishing, doesn't it?
Well, I mean, we're having a change time here in the UK. This is a change time in America, obviously, and she's the least change candidate you could probably put forward. She's the most establishment that they could get.
Yeah, she's certainly very establishment, and that brings me to another question, really, about the Clinton setup. But in a minute, can I ask you this, please, Eric? What is the worst fear of how America will emerge if Trump becomes the president? What are your worst fears about where we'll be in 4 years' time?
Yeah, I mean, I think we don't know what Trump will be like. I think a lot of Republicans have said to themselves, well, he's saying the right things now, but he's not a Republican. He's a Trumplican, or
he's a wild card, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, he's not. I mean, I've always leaned left, center left, and I would go back in time and I would vote for Mitt Romney, McCain, even George W. Bush over what Trump represents and what he says. He says things that are un-American or un-Western or just frightening.
But he seems to have a reasonable amount of traction in particularly places like watching him yesterday morning very early in Grand Rapids, Michigan, where he talks about the automotive industry and how that's been completely ripped apart by the car companies sending loads of jobs to Mexico. And people, a bit like the Brexiteers here, many of them, saying, they don't always know why they can't get a job, but they fear that one of the reasons is that many people are coming in from other countries and taking them, and they start to believe the Trump rhetoric, don't they?
And it's one thing to say that you will work with those people and create jobs and bring back steel jobs, which he could have done by not buying his steel from China in the first place. But but the way he says that he's going to fix it is, I will fix it. I mean, the good thing is if he becomes president tomorrow, apparently ISIS will be defeated, employment will go up in America, and crime will end. He's promised all of those things day one.
Yeah, but of course, as a comedian, you're being totally ironic there. And funny enough, Mr. Graham, who's with us in the studio tonight, my left here, has made the point all along. He just makes statements. Yeah. But there is no policy paper to back up the statement, is there, usually?
But even beyond being a comedian, those are the things he's promised these people. And I think that they genuinely believe him. And that's what's frightening. Because, people, we don't have a place in America and probably in the UK to get trusted information anymore. So they're listening to Fox News and the Drudge Report in America on the right, and that's feeding this feedback loop of information.
Well, Fox News is relatively mainstream compared to some of the Breitbart stuff, to be honest. I mean, Fox News actually took a while to get behind Trump because for a long time they were trying to discredit him. But what's interesting as well is the view of people over on this side of the pond again of America, because not only are they disappointed with the choice for president in terms of Clinton and Trump, but they're beginning to say things like, does this mean the end of America's kind of overarching, world view? Because Hillary Clinton's famously, had her own problems in foreign affairs. The whole Benghazi episode, and what went on in the Middle East under her Secretary of State, the whole Syrian situation. Forget about the emails, And if Trump gets in, he's already said he's going to close down any U.S. sort of base if the country in which the base is in doesn't pay for it.
NATO is now a pay-to-play environment where if you don't pay up your fees and you're invaded, well.
But I mean, Obama in his last few years was very reluctant to get involved in any kind of military action overseas. I mean, is America now no longer going to be in any way, the big stick?
Yeah, but that's because I think the will of the people hasn't been there, just like it hasn't been in the UK. Just initially when Cameron tried to get us involved in Syria, and it was the same for Obama, it blew up in their faces.
Yeah, but we haven't really got a military, so I mean, it's a bit different for us. We haven't got the choice.
Well, hang on, I think Obama, you're right, Mike, certainly in terms of expansionism military-wise overseas, but didn't Obama suddenly look at the world order and decide, actually, I'm not so sure that all that support we've had for Europe since the Second World War is any longer necessary? And wasn't he looking east? And wasn't he saying China is going to be where we're going to have to position, resources next in reaction to what they do? Surely Obama, I don't think Obama necessarily pulled out of all military expansionism. I think he just repositioned it around the world, didn't he?
I think he tried to, but every time he did, he got drawn back into the Middle East, drawn back into Ukraine and everywhere else. So,
Absolutely true.
He's been trying to tackle.
What do we think? Because you're unashamedly a Hillary supporter, Eric. So what do we think about the allegations from Mr. Trump of crookery within Hillary's family and the Hillary movement.
Well, I mean, she's no saint. There's no question there. I mean, she's not honest all the time. I mean, she just recently said that she was in New York on 9/11 when she was in D.C. on 9/11. I don't know how you misremember where you were on a day like that.
No.
But, you know.
And very stupid to do it as well, because, I mean,
it's not like,
you know that it's going to be checked
Things
out.
aren't overly documented these days. So,
but isn't that incredible, though, that you can have that belief and yet you'll still vote for this woman?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, well, what are my options? But at the same time, part of it goes down to the cult of personality we have behind the president. Trump says falsehoods all the time, but people believe him. Clinton, I mean, you know, he is not a good character reference, but he's got charm and likability. Maybe it's a gender thing. She can't get away with the same things they get away with left, right, and center.
But isn't part of the problem, and the reason why Trump has got a lot of support, is that politicians have completely lost the support of the people, generally speaking, because they all tell lies. They all promise things that never come true. They all get involved in scandal in one form or another. He's just he's just kind of the guy who's saying, yeah, well, I am who I am. You might not like it, and I'm going to exaggerate as much as I can, and I'm going to get away with as much as I can, but at least you know that's what I'm doing.
Well, you're right. He's just come up with a new set of promises that nobody else has so far dished out.
He said when he tried to back off having the wall with Mexico, he started to say, well, that was just a suggestion. All those times I said I'm going to build a wall, I was suggesting a wall. And that's what he'll say if he's elected, because it's never going to happen.
Well, last night in Grand Rapids, he was still saying, we're going to build a wall. He was still saying it.
And Mexico are going to pay for it.
But he was just playing his greatest hits. It's like, you know, if you go see your favourite band live, you want to hear the greatest hits. So that's what he was hitting.
Yeah, it was a mixture of that, and the Lock Her Up was the other great. He's a bit of a sort of, I mean, he's an amazing raconteur, and he's clearly, I mean, Mike was saying earlier that Hillary Clinton's oratory skills are not brilliant, and he completely, you know, kills her on that, because he's been trained as a TV host, apart from the fact that he's a very, very self-confident man.
Absolutely. I mean, Eric, you know, you're a performer. You've performed in front of crowds and all that. The way that Donald Trump uses his hands as expressive instruments to convince people he's right is brilliant. I mean, I think somebody must have told him, you know, you've got 5 fingers in every hand. If you use them right, 3 fingers for that.
Don't say he's got small hands, though.
Don't hit him on the hand.
Exactly. But you know what I'm saying? He is incredibly believable when he's up there, you know, on the hustings, telling the people down there, I'm going to make your life better because I'm Donald Trump, and I'm telling you, she's crook.
I'm telling you. Very nice indeed. Eric, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you.
I'm sure you'll have a bit of a nervous night, and who knows which way it's going to go. I'm hearing that some betting companies are moving closer to Trump at the moment, so we'll be bringing you more on that coming up very, very shortly. The betting companies don't normally get it wrong. That was, of course, Eric McElroy, comedian, and we'll be talking to lots more people throughout the course of the night. This is TalkSport. Coming up, we're going to be going back to the US Embassy party in London. We're a couple of more guests there. We're also going to be talking later on this hour to Chris Ando, Deputy Editor for America Blog. We've had somebody complaining that we're only having Democratic guests on. We did have somebody on from Republicans abroad, so keep your hair on, matey. Right now, Sandy Waugh with an update.
Yes, Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump, and indeed the rest of the world waiting anxiously for the results from key US states which could swing the presidential election for them. The race likely to be decided by fewer than a dozen areas. Exit polls in Florida, North Carolina, Pennsylvania and Ohio, all very close. And Mrs. Clinton hoping to become the first woman to serve as Commander-in-Chief, facing stiff competition, of course, from Donald Trump, who's connected with white working-class Americans in the main. Even before the polls opened, almost 45 million people had cast their ballots in early voting. Latest projections putting 104 for Hillary Clinton, 130 for Donald Trump.
Simulcast across the UK on Talk Sport and Talk Radio. US Election 2016 special with the 2 mics.
The 2 Mics election special on Talk Sport and Talk Radio. We're here with you all the way through the night. All the timings have been blown out of the water, by the way, Mike, because everything's so close, nobody really knows precisely when the counts are going to be in.
You're absolutely right, and there's long queues of people still waiting to vote in some places because of the law that if you're in the queue and it closes, you can stick
Well, that's
around.
fair enough, I think.
I do as well. I think it's fair enough.
Now, Bassard has said this about you, not particularly complimentary. He said, Mike Parry makes Trump look like Plato, Descartes and Newton all rolled into one.
Really?
Yes, I think that's rather disparaging.
It is disparaging, but that's from a basis of ignorance. I bet the guy who said that doesn't even know who Newton is. Keith Newton, probably. Played right back for Everton in 1970.
Yeah, well, you may well be right. Also, of course, for those of you who want to involve yourself in a more localised poll, we do have a poll going currently at the top of the Two Mikes Twitter, which is who would make the best president of the USA? Who gets your vote? Would it be me or would it be Mr. Parry?
Now, is that poll already open?
It's already open. In the early polling, I can tell you, 56 to 44 is the margin. Quite
in
close.
My favour.
In mine, actually.
Yeah, but you see, the thing is, another suggestion here, and a very good one, is that we should, before we close the poll, an hour before we close the poll, must put our 3 points forward, each of us, what we'd do if we were president and how we would change the country for the better.
All right, well, we can do that.
We can.
Meanwhile, though, let's talk to somebody who knows a bit more about the political movements in this country, certainly, than we do. He is Tim Farron, leader of the Liberal Democrats. Tim, welcome to the show, and what are you making of it all so far?
Good evening. Well, it's all very, very close, and I mean, I watch American politics a little bit like I watch, a game between two teams that I don't support, and of course I do want Hillary Clinton to win, but obviously I'm a spectator rather than a participant when it comes to this election.
But it's not as if we're going to be unaffected by whoever wins, though.
Oh, we undoubtedly will be. And my sense at the moment is the current feel is that Trump's doing better than people perhaps thought he would, but it's still far too close to call. Lots of these states are, which maybe have Trump ahead, maybe lots of the urban areas, more diverse areas that are more likely to vote Democrat haven't come through yet. So I don't think anybody should get too excited about it just yet, although I have to say the betting markets, I have noticed, seem to be edging back towards Trump. So that might be alarming if you, like me, think that'll be quite a bad thing.
OK, now, Tim, as member of Parliament in this country, will this country benefit from a President Trump or a President Clinton more beneficially, one or the other?
I think we'll benefit more from a President Clinton, not least because she will be more moderate, she'll be a safer pair of hands, and she's more predictable, frankly. Also, one of the big things about Donald Trump is that he talks about making America great again and putting America first and all that kind of stuff. That really means that America will have not that much to do, or not as much to do with the rest of the world as it does now.
What about international trade, Tim? Seriously, if Brexit goes through and then we become, in a position to trade with anybody in the world, and President Trump is talking about, closing down on with tariffs those goods that he doesn't want important to the country, but opening up and forging new trade links with countries who do want to trade, and we want to trade with the US, don't we?
Well, yes. I mean, of course, the reality is that whether we're in or out of the European Union, we can trade with whoever we like. There's nothing to stop us. I think the problem is for us that outside the European Union, certainly outside the single market, we won't be the gateway to Europe that America has seen us as being the last sort of 40 years. So that means that...
Yeah, but Trump doesn't necessarily say it that way, does he?
No, but the problem with
Trump...
Trump...
He hasn't been tied to the last 40 years.
No, but I think the point is that the problem with Trump is I don't know if he's particularly interested in anything that happens outside America's borders anyway.
You may be right.
I could be wrong, and I really hope that if he does win...
Well, everybody was wrong.
Years...
Everybody was wrong, particularly the politicians, about Brexit, weren't they? When the referendum took place, right up until the moment that the votes started coming in, everyone assumed that we'd be staying in the European Union. And this is part of the problem, is it not, Tim, now, in the societies that we now live, both in Britain and in America, that the politicians are misreading the signals. There's a lot of people who are very, very upset with the way the political class have been running their country, and they want to give them a good kicking.
Yeah, something in that. I mean, for what it's worth, I did see Brexit coming. I always thought you call a referendum without really strongly making a deep and decent emotional case of Britain in Europe, and then you're not likely to win it. I think the argument of Project Fear, that you should only stay in the EU because it'd be terrible if you're not, was never going to win, and it didn't win. And I always thought there was much better reasons for staying in the EU than the ones that David Cameron presented. But your point that this is populations, particularly in the Western world, who look at their leaders and think, I haven't benefited at all from the prosperity when we've done well, and I do badly worse than everybody else when our country does badly. Those people think, well, these politicians therefore haven't worked for me, and they end up voting for people like Donald Trump, and they vote Brexit. And I respect them. I just think it's a sad thing.
Okay.
What about the NATO situation, Tim? Because obviously, very important to us in all sorts of ways. And Donald Trump says if you're not paying your way, you can't be a member of our club anymore.
I mean, I guess the in terms of our contribution towards NATO, do you mean? Or,
yes.
Yeah.
No, I mean, whether the Americans think that Europe as a whole, and us in particular, are paying enough towards the protection of the Western world by the United States.
Yeah, I think the UK roughly pays the amount of money into NATO that it's meant to do. But undoubtedly, the kind of austerity that we seem to be wandering into even greater depth following the shrinking of the economy post-Brexit means that governments are going to be making cuts, and that's a real worry. I mean, to my mind, defending our military and making sure that we are capable of defending ourselves and being a force for good in the world, including sometimes with the emphasis being on force, is important, and so we do need to pull our weight in the world. Having said that, we also need to make sure we spend more on hospitals and schools as well, and it's not just all about the military.
No, it's not. But I mean, when he talks about places like South Korea, and when he gets endorsements from the North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, these are not people that you would necessarily want to mess about with. He's saying if the South Koreans don't want to pay for the base that we've got there, then we'll pull it out. If the Japanese don't want to pay more money for the base that we've got there, then we're going to pull that out. I mean, you've got to be concerned about that, haven't you?
Yeah, I mean, that's not an attitude of a consensual president who wants to build bridges and be a good ally. I mean, yes, you've got to go and fight your corner, and yes, you've got to fight to make sure that your opponents, or rather your opponent's the wrong word, but the other countries pay their way, and you understand why the US government would want to do that. But actually going and having an aggressive foreign policy where you stand on a very, very shouty platform and do these kind of negotiations in public, that's a bit dangerous. It's not how we've done things so far. And the whole art of diplomacy about keeping everybody on side, that's so very important. And I think Donald Trump doesn't appear to the temperament to do that. If he becomes president, I really, really hope that I'm wrong and that he does.
Tim, the Clintons as a political force, political family, have been around for a very long time. Have they come into your political firmament?
I've never met either of them, I'm afraid. I mean, both clearly
Porky
very
can introduce
people.
you if you like. He's very friendly with Bill Clinton.
Who does?
Porky, Mr. Parry.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll be up for that.
Yeah, I used to know Bill very well when he was governor of Arkansas. I was the first guy to spot he was going to be president of the United States.
Tim doesn't want to know about that. Let's get back to something.
Very interested.
Yeah, I was down in Little Rock, having a beer with Bill Clinton, and I told everybody.
Was it your idea?
Well, I know. I came back to Washington D.C. and said this guy's going to be the next president of the United States. Nobody believed me at the time.
Yeah, shocking, isn't it?
Yeah,
now,
they believe me now.
Let's get back to reality for a moment. Now, if it comes to pass that Theresa May manages to challenge this legal ruling about Article 50 and the triggering of it, if there is a vote in Parliament beyond that, which way will you be instructing the Lib Dem MPs to vote?
Well, first of all, we don't even know whether it's going to come to Parliament because it could end up going to the. It's going to go to the Supreme Court. May even go. This would be quite amusing. It may even go to the European
that
Court
would be
of Justice.
ironic, wouldn't it?
It would be. So it's entirely possible that the government could win a case in favour of us taking us out of the European Union at the European Court of Justice, which would be a wonderful irony, wouldn't it? My sense is that we started this whole process with democracy, with a referendum to depart from the EU in June, and you can't then end it with a stitch-up. And if you want to be in favour of the will of the people, then you surely must give a referendum at the end of the deal so that people get to decide where our destination is.
So you want another referendum, in other words?
Yeah, I mean, sadly, many people might be fed up with a referendum, but I don't think if you start with democracy, you can't end up with a stitch-up.
But we've had the referendum, though. Why do we need another
one? No, we had a
one?
referendum to leave the European Union. The point is, there are, if there are, I don't know, 40, 50 different potential outcomes of a deal with Europe, all of which are different, and nobody voted for any of those. I don't blame anybody for that, for what it's worth, but nobody voted, for example, for us to leave the single market.
Sorry, Tim, what would the question be in the next referendum, then?
Well, the question would be, do you accept this deal that the government will go and negotiate for us now, or do you want to reject it and stay where we are?
Well, hang on. I mean, that's so open-ended. So open-ended, yeah.
It's straightforward. It's not mad at all. I mean,
it is, because they can't negotiate a deal that doesn't exist.
Exactly.
And if you say, well, do you agree with this negotiation procedure, does that mean you have a referendum every time they have to renegotiate it?
Before we sign whatever deal we have with the EU, whether we're in... so let me give you a good example. So Stephen Phillips, who's the Tory MP who resigned on Thursday or Friday, he voted leave. And he said, effectively, that he could not support the Conservative government anymore because the Conservative government was taking us out of the single market, and he did not vote for that. Now, my guess, from having spoken to hundreds, if not thousands of people over the last few months, including many leavers, is that at least half of those people who voted to leave the European Union would have preferred us to stay in the single market, in which case, if we have it imposed upon us that we leave the single market, then that is an absolute travesty of democracy. And the only way around that is to let our government go and negotiate the best deal for Britain, and then bring that deal to the United Kingdom people and let them decide otherwise. We trusted the people on departure, we must trust them on destination.
Well, I think you're splitting hairs here a bit, Tim. But anyway, let me ask you this. Who do you think Hillary Clinton, if she becomes the next president, will want us in or out of Europe? Similarly, Mr. Trump?
Generally speaking, Mr. Trump has said he wants Britain to leave because I think he supports, the kind of populist, insular politics that Nigel Farage stands for. And Hillary Clinton knows that, Britain is America's best ally.
Yeah.
But one of the reasons it's its best ally is because it A, speaks English and shares a culture, and B, it's the gateway to Europe. And if we stop being the gateway to Europe, we're not that worth bothering with, I'm afraid.
Well, I'll tell you what, Tim, you may be on the side of the victors because that seems to be the way the world is going. But thank you very much indeed. Tim Farron, Lib Dem leader over in the US Embassy, seems to want a referendum every couple of days.
Why
don't we just do away with Parliament and just have a referendum and just have one guy counting the votes?
Oh, we're going to put up the price of milk. Referendum.
Yes, no, maybe. This is Talk Sport.
People, we got to get over before we go under. Hey, country, you didn't say what you meant. You just changed. A brand new funky president. Stock market going up, jobs going down. It ain't no funky job to be found. Tax keep going up. I changed from my glass, now I drink from my paper cup, getting bad.
This is Talk Sport, and we are the Two Mikes. It's an election special. America decides. Florida has voted for winning candidate in all but one election since 1964, is what we're being told. And, of course, what we're doing now is waiting for the Florida result, as indeed we are waiting for the Pennsylvania result. The belief is that if Donald Trump wins Florida, then that is one very big step towards the White House. Doesn't mean he's won the whole thing, but if he doesn't win it, then the chances are he is out of it. But one of the more important sort of betting scenarios that we're being told at the moment is that Trump has now moved a much closer favourite with some of the betting companies, which could be something to do with a lot of money suddenly being placed. Crossover on Betfair to Trump, Mike, to serious gamblers. That is huge, says Richard. Nothing between them in the betting now, says Greeny. Hillary Clinton 8-11, Trump 11-10. And CFC Nigel, which is rather a clever little graphic he's given us, because of the fact that Trump has won Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, all the way up to North Dakota, South Dakota and Nebraska. It does look like a red line through the middle of the United States continent. And he says, looks like he's building that wall after all.
And by the way, that's the one thing that confuses most people who are watching the TV coverage, that the red and blue association with parties is the opposite to this country.
It is indeed.
Red is right-wing Trump and blue is left-wing Hillary.
Yeah, and don't make the mistake as well of thinking that because the blue states tend to be smaller in geographical size, that they're less important.
No, absolutely.
Because whenever you see a map of Republicans and Democrats, the red is always a much bigger area on the American
take
country.
Florida, for instance, which is a key state. It's only about half the size of Montana, which only has 3 collegiate returns.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly right. Yeah. So, anyway, let's talk to our good friend Chris Andu, Deputy Editor for America Blog. We spoke to him a couple of weeks ago. He's very much on the Hillary Clinton side of the fence, but let's see whether he's getting nervous as things seem to be tightening up a bit. Chris, a very good morning to you.
Good morning.
So, is it a good morning? That's the big question. What's going on from where you're sitting?
It's not a good morning for us. It's not a good morning for the relationship between our country and yours. It may be a good morning for America and Russia's budding romance.
Well, I mean, America and Russia would be better off having a budding romance than having a war, I suppose, wouldn't they?
I don't know.
You don't know?
Basically, if America and Russia had a budding romance, Russia would be the dominant partner in that relationship with President Trump.
Yes. Well, very possibly so. Let's talk about what the Democrats are saying about what's going on at the moment. I mean, so far, everything is being sort of coming in a lot slower. The projections are so close that nobody's really willing to make them. And so what sort of time frame are we looking at here to get the first real clue? When are we going to see Florida? When are we going to see Pennsylvania?
Hopefully Pennsylvania soon. And, of course, once the West Coast comes in, that's really going to balance things out. You know, the West Coast, if California's 55 electoral votes. Of course, Colorado in the Mountain Time, that's going to come in. New Mexico. There's a lot of good things coming out for us. The red states usually come in first. You know, they're lower population. But, yeah, it's Florida we really expected. Florida would have been the block. Had we got Florida, which we really expected to get early, that would have completely blocked Trump, and the next few hours could just be a celebration. But Florida is leaning Trump right now, and we don't know how that's going to turn out.
Chris, I was given an observation by a friend of mine who's an American political commentator who says there will be a big silent majority because the animosity between the two sides in this presidential election is so severe that whoever wins, you don't want to admit you voted for the losing party. It might affect your relationships within your own family, your social standing, or even your job. I mean, is that a fair reflection of how brutal this election is?
Yeah, it is. Tribalism has taken over, and a lot of people don't want to admit that they accept Trump's racism, that they accept that he makes fun of handicapped people, all of the negatives that go along with Trump. They don't want to admit that because they would be stigmatized. But I think, you know, one exit poll earlier had 28% of Republicans in exit polls saying that they voted for Hillary, and that's clearly not true.
Well, the problem with the polls,
I
was going to say, we've had a problem with the polls, Chris, haven't we, over recent times, both in the U.S. presidential elections, but also in the Brexit the Brexit referendum here, in the general election here as well. I mean, what's the message coming from? I mean, or is it too early to tell the message coming from the Senate votes and the House of Representatives as well? Because if, for example, if it looks as though Trump is going to win this, then the Democrats will be hopeful that they can hold on to the legislature so that they can pretty much block anything he wants to do.
Well, the House is gone. The House will stay with Republican control. The Senate is still an open question. We did pick up a seat, the Democrats did, regarding Tammy Duckworth in Illinois, which is good. And the fact is, at this snapshot in time, the Democrats have not lost anything that we expected to win yet. Nothing has been called. So a lot of things are looking bad, but they haven't been called yet. So a lot of times the urban areas are the very last to report. So we're still holding out hope. And then, like I said, as we move west, we believe that things will improve and that Hillary could still win, but it's way too close for comfort.
The loser in this presidential race has got to really find a niche in life, haven't they? Because it's been so intense.
Well, I mean, if Trump's brand was high-end, luxury, opulence, and he's basically just appealing to a very low-class segment.
That's a bit harsh, isn't it?
You see the problem, Chris, that a lot of people see in the division of the country, not just in your country, but in our country as well, is that kind of sneering attitude of the so-called liberal elite who make out that because you haven't got a college education, you shouldn't even have the right to vote because you're too stupid and you're going to vote for the wrong guy and it's going to be terribly difficult. I mean, that's pretty obnoxious, isn't it?
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm just saying what market shares are. I mean, he spent his entire career appealing to people who pay, $300 a night for a luxury hotel room.
Good luck getting one for $300 a night, by the way.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
I said good luck getting one for $300 a night.
So he's traded that for, a different demographic. So he's kind of got to go all in. The fact is, people who live in Trump condos want the names changed. Trump hotel bookings are down. His brand was prestige. This is what he built his brand on, and that brand is shot.
Well, you say that, but he's now turned it into a political brand, which is at the moment leading in all betting markets in the world as the favourite.
Well, he could. I mean, he could still pull it out, but I don't know. It looks like Hillary's just squeaked by in Virginia. She's a point ahead in Virginia. So it does look like, I mean, Hillary could very much still win. And Trump's unpopularity is 65%, I think, in the United States.
Yeah, so is hers, though,
he's
isn't
still very reviled. No, hers is like 55. He's still, both candidates are unpopular, but he's much more unpopular.
So what are you going to do if Trump wins?
Well, I mean, it's really, I lived through the Bush years. In the Bush years, I moved to San Francisco. I said, if I'm going to stay in this country, I tried to immigrate to Vancouver, and I couldn't.
Yeah, they wouldn't let you.
You
can always go to Mexico. You can always go to Mexico, Chris.
That's right. Yeah, if you can get across the wall before. Yeah, but get there quick before the wall goes up, and or try San Francisco. Unreconstructed hippiedom might be the answer to all those people who can't live in a Trump America.
Absolutely, could well be. Yeah, Chris, thank you very much indeed. Fascinating picture scenario here from Craig, who's done this. If you look at Trump without any hair, he looks just like Louis van Gaal.
He does.
How about that?
Oh, it's Louis van Gaal. Gosh, America votes for Trump.
Now, do you want me to give you an update on the vote which is out there at the moment?
Yes,
who would make the best president of USA? Who gets your vote?
Yeah.
At the moment, it's standing at 53-47.
Okay, so I'm pulling back
in my favour.
Yeah, I'm pulling back. Yeah, but we haven't delivered our three key points, have we? Our 3 bullet points as to why we would make a great president of the United States.
Can you think of 3 bullet points that Donald Trump's got or that Hillary Clinton's got?
I'm not interested in them. I'm interested in what we're going to deliver.
Well, you should be interested in them because this
millions.
is an election special about who's going to be the next president of the White House.
Yeah, but they don't affect this individual poll between you and I. That's all I'm saying.
No, but
I'm not putting on the overcoat of Donald Trump, and I'm not putting on the tiara of Hillary Clinton. Okay?
Why do you make it a gender-specific garment?
Well, because men don't wear tiaras, and
some do,
and men wear overcoats.
Well, women wear overcoats as well.
No,
you're saying women don't wear overcoats?
Women wear outside coats. They wear fur coats.
Women wear outside coats.
Yeah, they wear.
Women wear fur coats.
They wear fashionable coats.
Have you gone mad?
No, I haven't gone mad. You never ever refer to a woman. Oh, look, she's put her overcoat on.
You've never heard of a woman getting a coat?
Getting a coat, certainly, but you very rarely refer to a woman putting on an overcoat, do you?
Well, I don't refer to anyone putting on an overcoat. It's such a ridiculously outmoded word.
Oh, don't be ridiculous.
I have
a coat.
You do. I don't have an overcoat.
You put your overcoat on. It's -5 outside. People say that in Washington DC all the time.
Well, that's why I was asking. An undercoat as well.
That's why I was asking.
That's painting you're talking about.
That's why I was asking Sam Delaney what the temperature was in Washington DC, because at this time of the year you can get down to -20.
Because in the midst of all of these, electoral college votes, the swing states, and the weather in Washington DC is one of the most important things that people listening to this show
It's an important factor. It's an important factor in the relevance to people getting out there and voting, believe me.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Now, we've got Ask Porky coming up in the next hour.
Yes.
We'll also be going backwards and forwards once again to Trump HQ and to Hillary Clinton HQ.
Yeah.
I mean, people seem to be saying on Twitter at the moment, in every country, including Australia, that Trump has now been installed as the favourite in most betting markets. However, I'm also hearing from a couple of contacts that the other financial markets are beginning to collapse, which would suggest that they believe that Trump is going to be in as well, because we were told that if that was the case, that the markets would not be in favour of it all. But anyway, we've got lots more to do. This is the Two Mikes election special. This is TalkSport. Coming up in the next hour, we are going to be talking to Tatton Spiller from simplepolitics.co.uk. They're hosting an election night party at an American diner, The Social. Jay Caruso, assistant managing editor for Red State Conservative blog, is going to be on as well. We're going to be hearing from the Trump camp. We're going to be hearing more from that US election party over, of course, at the US Embassy in London. And it's Ask Porky as well. We've got loads of great questions already, Mr. Parry. Many of them about presidential politics, many of them about America. It's a slightly different Ask Porky tonight. But if you want to get a question in, try and make it relevant to the US election, of course, which at the moment is very, very close, too close to call. But betting companies are now installing Donald Trump as the favourite. Could he do it? We'll find out right now. Time for the news headlines.
It's 3 o'clock, live from New York's Times Square, and we're still not really any nearer to being able to work out who'll become the next president of the United States of America. Counting is underway in key battleground states that will decide who wins. We are calling a number of areas for the candidates, but they're all ones we were expecting to have a clear victor. So Hillary Clinton's got New York, Illinois and Vermont. Donald Trump's walked off with Texas, South Dakota and Wyoming. Patricia Sagba is a global affairs analyst in New York. She thinks the businessman ran a smart campaign which drew parallels with the EU referendum.
What you saw at play in the Brexit vote was that anti-establishment backlash, and really Trump has been playing to that in this election. He's been promising to deport undocumented workers. He's been promising to tear up trade deals that have cost millions of American jobs.
But other areas are too close to call, including in the crucial state of Florida, where counting's ongoing. North Carolina, Pennsylvania and Ohio are also important and will help decide this race. Throughout the campaign, Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton have accused each other of being unfit to be president. But the US ambassador to the UK, Matthew Barzin, believes the country will move on from the hated rhetoric.
I think the American people have proven every 4 years we are resilient. You remember 2000, that went on for 6 weeks, right up to our Supreme Court, to a 5-4 decision. It doesn't get any more intense than that. And we recovered, we moved forward.
In other news, Tesco Bank says it's paid out around £2.5 million to customers after it was hacked the weekend. Roughly 9,000 people had money stolen. Sugary drinks could be banned from hospitals in England under new plans to reduce the waistlines of health service staff. It's estimated more than half of employees in the NHS are overweight. And Heather Stanning has announced her retirement from rowing. The double Olympic champion says she's going to continue serving in the British Army. That's the latest from Sky News. I'm Barry Weir.
Talk Sport. Sports Update with Sport Magazine. Now available as a free iPad app. Download it today at the Apple newsstand.
I'm Tanya Snuggs. Rangers striker Kenny Miller says there's no reason his country can't cause an upset against England on Friday. Scotland go to Wembley for a World Cup qualifier under pressure after defeat by Slovakia and a draw with Lithuania. Miller's told Sky Sports News his old teammates should embrace being outsiders.
You're going into a game like this, you're definitely going into as underdogs. 1, you're away from home. 2, you're playing against a team that has got a level of player that is probably superior to you. But again, that's never been an issue for us.
England's cricketers start their 5-test series against India this morning. 19-year-old Hasib Hamid will make his debut in Rajkot. He'll also open alongside captain Alistair Cook with Gary Ballance dropped. Cook says he's not impressed enough to keep his place.
An unfortunate decision on Gary. Unfortunately, in his six test matches back, he hasn't quite scored the runs which he would have liked to have done. It's given someone else an opportunity.
Wasps flanker Nathan Hughes could make his England Rugby Union debut this weekend after being retained in a 25-man squad. 2 of those players will miss out on Saturday's match against South Africa at Twickenham. Northampton's Tamala Harrison is released, but his club captain and fellow back rower Tom Wood stays. Johnny May and Marlon Yard are expected to start on the wings. And double Olympic champion Heather Stanning has announced her retirement from rowing. The 31-year-old successfully defended her pairs title at this year's Rio Games with her partner Helen Glover. She'll continue serving as a major in the British Army. All the latest sports news is on our website, talksport.com.
Simulcast across the UK on Talk Sport and Talk Radio. US Election 2016 special with the 2 mics.
I'm Mike Graham, he's Mike Parry. You're listening to the 2 Mics election special on Talk Sport and Talk Radio. That song, of course, Hail to the Chief. Who is going to be the chief? It's a night of history in the making as America decides whether to elect a president who's never held political office but who carries the hopes of an awful lot of working class people with him, or their first ever woman leader but the most hated Democratic candidate of all time. Here's what Hillary has to say.
So many people are counting on the outcome of this election, what it means for our country, and I'll do the very best I can if I'm fortunate enough to win today.
Donald Trump's convinced he's going to storm the White House. He's now been installed as the favourite in a lot of betting areas. Here's what he has to say.
Everybody's talking about the record turnout at the polls. It's amazing, but please go to the polls. We have a movement going on. They've never seen anything like it. Go to the polls and vote. We're going to make America great again.
It's going to be a night of drama from sea to shining sea, and it's already proving to be so. Things are running much later. We're 2 hours into the show already, and we haven't really got any proper results to point at to see what is going on. We're waiting for Florida. We're waiting for Pennsylvania. You're listening to the Two Mikes election special with me, Mike Graham, and Mike Parry. Sandy Waugh is here with us to give us an update. I'm hearing, Sandy, by the way, the Mexican peso is down 7%. Gold is up 3%. The Dow Jones is already down 500 points, and that would tend to indicate that they think Trump is going to win.
Yeah, all you can do at this stage, because the results that are declaring so far are all the ones we would expect and aren't really giving us any indication of what's going on or how we're likely to see this end up by tomorrow morning, this morning, at the end of these voting procedures.
Yeah. I mean, have we had any estimates yet of when we might get some kind of...
We're getting quite close. I was looking at the latest counting for Florida. We're at about 95% of the votes cast, so we're getting there. But we are virtually neck and neck. At one point, they had Trump at 49% of the vote in Florida. The latest I've seen is sort of 48% each way. The mood has certainly shifted. Beginning of the night, and certainly as the exit polls came in, there was a suggestion that Hillary Clinton had a lead of somewhere in the region of 2%. And some of the pundits were actually saying, go to bed early. This is going to be a bit of a landslide. It's going to be a shoo-in. And of course, as the evenings progressed, the mood music coming from the various camps has got much more nervous from the Hillary Clinton camp, much more bullish and confident from the Donald Trump camp. And as you say, the markets, the betting, the currencies, all moving in the direction that would suggest they are looking more at the possibility that this is going to be a Donald Trump victory. These key swing states are, some of them, much later in declaring than we thought they might be, partly because we're seeing historic levels of turnout.
So is this now answering the question I asked you last time you were in this studio, Sandy? What effect are the huge turnout figures having on each candidate? It looks like, if we can predict anything from it, it might be having an effect in favour of Mr. Trump.
Quite possibly. The question, of course, is whether it's enough to make the difference. As we know, these key states, places like Florida, because you only need to win by almost literally one vote, and that means you get all 29 of them, isn't it, for Florida? Right. That's the reason these key areas stack up so much. North Carolina we're looking for, Virginia we were looking for, Pennsylvania, we thought some of these might be in already. One of the factors that's quite interesting in this is the number of others votes that are being counted. This is running at really quite high levels historically. Virginia, for example, latest numbers I saw, 5% of the vote for others. One factor some people are pointing to is vote swapping, is vote trading. There have been a lot of apps, if you look at what's been going on social media, of people saying, OK, I'm in a seat that is going to be solidly, let's say for the sake of argument, a Clinton vote. I'll trade my vote for someone who's in a more marginal seat and vote for an other candidate so that the others get more votes cast for them, and actually that determines political funding as we go forward. So some of these more marginal parties are trading, if you like, the protest vote. I mean, to give it, this is the hashtag Never Trump, so that shows you where this is coming from. This is people who want to make sure, as they see it, that they stop Donald Trump.
But as far as the voting process goes, I mean, you can vote apparently in America for almost anybody you like. You can put anybody's name down on the ballot. Even if their name is not actually on the ballot. And we were told earlier that George Bush went in to vote and actually didn't fill out a name at all.
Exactly. None of the above, effectively.
None of the above,
and it is fascinating, and it is all really unprecedented, and certainly enormous turnout, which I guess is, whatever you think about what's been going on, that's got to be good. That people are participating.
As the three of us were here on the night of Brexit, we're all experiencing a bit of deja vu here, aren't we?
Yeah.
Because when we came into the studio that night, the general feeling was that it would be a vote to stay. It would
be tight, but it would be stay.
A Remain victory was there, but it was going to be tight. When we came to the studio tonight, everybody thought, well, it'll be tight, but there's a Hillary Clinton victory in the offing, and we're now in mid-swing, so to speak, aren't we?
Well, it was around about this time, funnily enough, night of the referendum results, and Sandy, you might remember that it started to move slightly the other way, and all the indicators seemed to then suggest that actually it was going to be a very narrow victory for leave. And,
Yeah.
and, this has got a very similar feel to it.
But exactly the same things were happening. The market started moving, currency started shifting up and down, the bookies started issuing, what they thought were their thoughts on what was happening.
Yeah.
It is deja vu.
There is a lot of nervousness about calling this because places like CNN, for example, are saying we're going to be cautious this time. You don't want to call it too soon.
Yeah.
And you can see why, with the votes being as close as they are. If we're at 94, 95% of the votes counted in Florida and we're still pretty much neck and neck, then it's a very brave person that calls this before every last vote is counted.
Absolutely right. Well, certainly, thank you very much indeed. We will be talking to some more guests coming up in this hour. We're going to have Ask Porky as well. Losty has tweeted in at the two mics. People vastly underrated the hatred for Hillary Clinton. The same old politics people are tired of.
Yes.
Trump offers people hope. And Becky says, Lib Dem guy calling for another referendum on the single market. Democracy might as well be decided by a Twitter poll.
Yeah, exactly.
And for what is going to be decided by a Twitter poll, of course, is which one of us, Mikes, you would prefer to be in charge if there was an election for us as the President of the United States. At the moment, it's getting closer, 52 to 48 now, in my favour.
Yeah,
so
but it's moving in my direction.
Too close to call
moving in my direction.
that one as well.
So listen, folks, get involved in that poll, please. Vote Porky, vote often. That's the general...
now, there's a phrase we haven't heard for a while.
Exactly, the general signature call from myself when I believe that I'm in the right and I can do a job for you.
Now, just to digress for a moment, we touched upon Roy Keane's comments about Everton. You, of course, had a terribly bad weekend, waving to the Everton team and not being recognised and them not really being interested in talking to you.
Yeah.
They then going to Stamford Bridge and losing 5-0. You then declaring that it was the worst time you'd ever seen Everton lose by that many goals.
Yeah.
People did post a couple of things yesterday. 2005, they lost 4-0 to Bolton and they lost 7-0 to Arsenal.
I said the game as I was at.
Oh, games you were at?
Games I was at, yeah.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, and I wasn't at those
Anyway,
two
Roy
games.
Keane comes out yesterday and basically says that he doesn't blame the players for Everton, but he blames the Everton organisation. And he used to have problems with Martinez, as he called him, saying that they're all feigning injury.
He was the captain of Ireland.
What?
Seamus Coleman is the captain of Ireland.
Yes.
An Everton player.
Yeah.
And they hold him in huge esteem. They think he's a great boy. £60,000 from Sligo Rovers. Never pulled out of an international squad. The problem with Roy Keane is he is a bearded, bitter man. Because he was
Well, you're a bearded, bitter man.
No,
don't let it affect you.
He's a bearded, bitter man, right, who can't give up on his failures from the past. And the fact that he
You're now turning on him.
Well, I'm not turning on him. I'm stating the facts here, right? The fact that he was a member of the Manchester United team on the day in 1995 when Everton beat Manchester United 1-0 at Wembley and took the FA Cup off them, which they'd held from the season before when they won the double. In the same season that Blackburn Rovers had already taken the league title off them, right, because they couldn't hold on to that either.
Right.
He was humiliated and embarrassed, and he said on the day, he said, we should never have lost. We were a much better team. We had 10 chances that we missed. He's a bearded, bitter man, and I think he should put his mouth away before he makes himself look so ridiculously stupid that people will question his ability and his right to hold any sort of position in the international setup.
Well, James McCarthy, of course, is not playing. He's pulled out of the squad, which is why the row broke out. But anyway, that's enough bitterness for the one night, because there's been so much bitterness over in the course of the race between Trump and Clinton, of course. And Sandy Moore is here to give us some latest news. Sandy?
Yeah, I'm seeing the first calls now for any of these marginals. This is Virginia, which is 13. The two separate networks, two separate sets of pundits calling that as a Clinton victory. Now, obviously, this is very early. That's not confirmed. That is a projection. But they're saying that Virginia looks like it's gone to Hillary Clinton. That would be 13 votes. That would be the first of these marginals that's
Well, that would
coming
be one
in.
that she would look very, very bad if she didn't win.
Well,
because, of course, her running mate is Tim Kaine, Virginia senator.
And, the caution, the concern about that was this has taken so long to declare, which would suggest it was as much closer than they.
But it was listed at the start of the day as a Democrat likely, so that's a relief to her.
Yeah.
But had there been any other result there, she would have been in real trouble. So that's just confirming, really, that at the moment things seem to be going to plan for her.
Yes, well, we shall see. I'm still very, very close, Sandy. Thank you very much indeed. Coming up, we're going to be talking to Tatton Spiller, possibly, and we're going to be talking also to Jay Caruso, Assistant Managing Editor for Red State Conservative blog, I should say, and presumably somebody in favour of the Trump victory. We shall see.
Not Bobcat Blob.
Not Bobcat Blob, no, exactly right. This is Talk Sport. Peso's fallen to a record low against the US dollar. Clinton wins New Mexico is a projection. Trump wins Missouri. Also, of course, too close to call in Nevada, which was the place where Donald Trump was launching a lawsuit because he said that the voting procedures were in some way irregular.
He's issued a few of those.
Well, he has, but I mean, most of them have been dismissed. Interestingly enough, we'll be going back to the Trump HQ and the Hillary Clinton HQ shortly as well, but also be talking to Justin Everett, who is in Colorado, which is a big swing state. Of course, one of the ones that both of them would like to win. He's been re-elected to the Colorado State House. He's a Republican. We'll be talking to him very shortly as well. But it's a fascinating kind of movable feast, isn't it? I mean, since we've started this show just over a couple of hours ago, and we'll be here till 6 a.m., as usual, the pundits are kind of at a complete and utter loss as to which way to go. They can't call any of the exit polls because they're too close.
I talked earlier about the silent majority, and I do think there is still a silent majority about, because the whole world now, and I think a lot of it's led by Hollywood, and not just Hollywood in Hollywood, if you see what I mean. I'm talking about the Hollywood effect in this country, you know, Cumberbatch and people like that. The chap who was the night manager, who's that...
What, you mean Tom Hiddleston?
Tom Hiddleston and all that. They all appear
Why
in all
do you
these...
keep forgetting his name?
Well,
you talk about him on almost every show.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, fine. Don't worry. I've got more important things to think about.
Like what?
And these guys appear in all these adverts on telly all the time saying, please send £3 to Syria because, you know, children are suffering terrible things, which they are, and you know, into the Sudan and African countries and all that, all of which we'd all love to support. But you get the feeling that it's you know, that there is a bleeding heart mission amongst a certain section of society, right? And because of that, because they're rich and they're famous, you know, we've had this discussion before, a lot of people like to be associated with the way they're thinking. Now, I believe there's a silent majority, because not everybody wants to think that way, but you don't want to be unpopular.
But also, do you not think this way in the last week or so? I mean, when we had John Bon Jovi, Bruce Springsteen, you know, Jay-Z, Beyonce, and all these kind of, you know, rock stars, albeit some of them a bit ancient now, just lining up on one side. I mean, we heard, I think, yesterday from our guest, Sandra Bonetti in Hollywood.
We did.
That we got Mike Tyson, Gary Busey.
On the other side.
Yes,
that's right.
And I mean, if you are sort of living in the Rust Belt of America, as much as you might have thought that Bruce Springsteen was a great guy who represented you, I mean, he doesn't anymore.
No, he doesn't.
You know, Bruce Springsteen's a multi-millionaire. You know, he's a left-wing Democrat. You know, he doesn't have any real resonance with anyone from the places where he came.
Unbelievable what you say about Bruce Springsteen, because I saw a documentary on Johnstown in Pennsylvania, and I mean, you know, they just whisked the cameras around a few of the old steel plants. They're all closed down. They're not doing anything. Trucks that have been parked up for years and all this kind of stuff, you know. And as you quite rightly say, Bruce Springsteen came to prominence in a pair of Levi jeans with a towel in his back pocket indicating, you know, the sweat of the working man and all that kind of stuff.
And all those original songs were about New Jersey, working class people and all that.
Exactly. And now when, you know, he has what I call the bleeding heart syndrome, and that is that, you know, left-wing politicians everywhere in the world are perceived, or the popular campaign which accompanies them, is that these are caring people. You know, only left-wing politicians will be caring. Right-wing politicians cannot be caring. So, therefore, if you want to be part of the caring society, you've got to adapt to left-wing policies, because if you're right, you're a horrible person.
No, exactly right. Let's talk to Justin Everett, because he is a man who has been re-elected tonight, and in Colorado in the State House, he's a Republican. Let's find out what he's projecting and what he's thinking about the way Donald Trump's campaign is currently going. Justin, a very good morning to you, and welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
Thanks for being here.
We've heard from an awful lot of Hillary Clinton supporters who are beginning to sound a little bit squeamish as the night goes on. I presume you're a Trump supporter, unless you're one of those Republicans who would rather he wasn't running at all. What's your take so far on the way it's going?
Well, it's actually a little shocking. If you follow the poll numbers, everybody's predicting Hillary to possibly run away with this. And they're looking at a lot of the states that Hillary was supposed to win, and Trump's competitive in those states. You know, North Carolina, Virginia. He's doing pretty well in Ohio. All those different states that, you know, should have gone Hillary. We're leaning Hillary. So it's surprising everybody. But if you look at this whole election cycle, Americans are angry. They're angry with what's going on currently in government. They're angry with the current administration, and they want to send somebody that's going to be an agent of change. And if you look at the final 4 people standing in the Republican and Democrat side in the presidential election, you had Bernie Sanders, who's sort of a bomb thrower in the U.S. Senate. You have Ted Cruz, who's kind of a bomb thrower in the U.S. Senate. You have Donald Trump, who is clearly a bomb thrower. And then you had Hillary, the establishment candidate. So you're sort of seeing this sort of old guard, same old status quo with Hillary Clinton, and you're looking at Donald Trump as he's sort of the agent of change. He's the one that's going to go into Washington, D.C., and, clearly he's not bought and paid for, and he's going to sort of blow things up, so to speak, in Washington, D.C., and that's what American people want, I think, this year.
Justin, we've just been having a conversation, there's 2 of us in this studio, great to have you on the show, thank you, about the possibility of a silent majority, i.e. some people actually, agree with a lot of what Donald Trump's saying, but don't want to be perceived to be a nasty person by actually admitting it. But when they get into a ballot situation, they're marking down their cross next to Donald Trump's name.
I think that is very on point. I think that, the media here in the United States, and I think the international media as well, sort of looks at Donald Trump as being this abhorrent person. And so it's sort of, no one wants to be out front and publicly supporting Donald Trump. And you're seeing even our, mainstream politicians like your Paul Ryan or Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives distance themselves from Donald Trump. But then you talk to people and then it's sort of a wink, wink, nudge, nudge. I'm probably going to vote for Trump, but no one wants to put that up on social media. Right. Or talk to the press about that.
So
I think you're completely right about that.
If he does end up winning, Justin, by the way, I wish you hadn't said that to my colleague here, because there's nothing he likes more. There's nothing he likes more than being praised by a politician.
Yes, thank you.
It's going to make his night, right? But the problem is, right, now that we're leaning towards a possible Trump victory, people will say he was a man that more or less was going to destroy the Republican Party from the inside. I mean, will the Republican Party change as a result of a Trump victory? And what I mean by that is that will those sort of establishment Republican figures be moved to the side?
Well, I think we've seen that trend line. I mean, you looked at the 2014 election, and then you looked at John Boehner getting thrown out as Speaker of the House. I think the establishment Republicans are becoming an endangered species. I mean, they still control a lot of money and power, but that's been kind of usurped in this election cycle, and I think we're going to continue that trend because, again, the politics as usual that we're seeing here, whether it's a Republican or Democrat, people are just sick of it, and they're willing to throw the bums out.
I think we're just getting information through, Mike, here on a very significant development.
We've been told Donald Trump wins Ohio, but that may be an exit poll rather than an actual result. Justin, I don't know where you're sitting. I don't know whether you can see that, but that would be massively significant for him.
Yeah, I'm looking at. I'm actually just typed in Google presidential election results, and that seems to have a nice little update. So he's up 53 to 42%. I mean, he's up by
that's big too.
500,000 votes. That's significant.
That is huge.
It is at this point a projection.
It's a projection. Yeah. That's absolutely right. It's not right. Just in the those who fear a Trump victory say, well, what's going to happen is the economy's going to collapse because of trade tariffs and all that. But one bulwark of his policy, if we can get into Donald Trump's policies, are tax cuts. Now, in almost every country in the world where tax cuts have been implemented, including your own, when Ronald Reagan became the president, tax cuts actually stimulate economies, don't they?
Well, you have more disposable income. Less money's going to the government, it's being wasted, and it's being reinvested in the economy. So, I mean, tax cuts do work. It's simple economics. So, and if he does have Republicans controlling the U.S. House and the U.S. Senate, he'll be able to get those passed as well. And, we saw it in '86 with Reagan, you bet, with one of the major tax overhauls that we've ever seen in the history of the United States.
Yes.
And, that should be a top agenda item for him because, if the economy's humming along, everybody's happy, then
That's
Republicans don't get killed in midterm elections with the sitting president being in our party. And then, we want to move the country forward and we want to have, negative growth or 1% growth or 2% growth. I mean, there's no reason why we shouldn't be stimulating enough growth in this country to where it's, the economy's growing 3, 4, 5, 7%.
Exactly.
And as this country sort of comes to terms with the possibility of Trump being the president, I mean, there will have to be a kind of a switch in mentality as well, won't there? Because we've heard that he might appoint Rudy Giuliani as his Attorney General.
Yeah.
He's going to have to appoint a lot of interesting people, perhaps from different backgrounds in jobs in the cabinet. There's going to have to be a major kind of mindset change for people to accept the fact that this guy, who they know as the head of the Celebrity Apprentice TV show, as the former kind of boss of Miss America pageants, as the billionaire who didn't care, who launched a load of things and then kind of either had success with them or didn't. His name supposedly used to represent what you would call high-end fashion, high-end sort of expenditure. That's now in the mud. It's going to be a completely incredibly different situation, isn't it?
Yeah, I think, and people are going to have to accept that. I think, the politicians in Washington aren't going to like the changes. And you see, for Hillary Clinton, for example, Rudy Giuliani is not a big Hillary Clinton fan. I think they ran against each other for U.S. Senate in the state of New York. And then he's a former prosecutor. So, with everything that's going on, or the revelations through the FBI, I mean, that's going to be uncomfortable. But, I think the country wants to move forward. I think they want to see that type of change. And sort of Donald Trump was sort of, not only do we want that change, we're going to take the
studio and out of it. Why do America always manage to end up with candidates who really are not the best of what America can produce? Now, I think the answer to that is that actually there's not a lot to be gained in American politics unless you actually become president. So a lot of people are not prepared to go through a cycle of 4 years or 8 years to try and get there. I mean, for instance, if you run Microsoft and your name's Bill Gates, you're the richest man in the world.
Yeah.
Why would anybody with the talent and the skill to be able to build a business like that possibly want to be the President of the United States of America?
Yes. Well, somebody just asked that question about Donald Trump. Well, that was asked, Porky. Thank you very much, Mr. Parry. Some very straight answers to a lot of complicated questions.
Yes.
Hillary Clinton's won Colorado. She's won Virginia.
Yes.
But it looks as though Donald Trump may have won Ohio. Currently 169 to 131 in Trump's favour. 270 the magic number. Of course, we'll keep you updated as we go through the night, right through until 6 a.m. This is TalkSport.
Indeed.
I want you to keep imagining a tomorrow where instead of building walls, we're breaking down barriers.
Inequality is too high, wages are too low, and it's just too hard to get ahead.
Tax the rich, feed the poor, tell there are no rich no more.
We're going to make sure that Wall Street corporations and the super rich pay their fair share of taxes. We're going to increase the federal minimum wage and give the middle class a raise.
I don't know who created Pokemon Go, but I'm trying to figure out how we get them to have Pokemon go to the polls. I want to get everybody out of the shadows, get the economy working.
We've got to keep our foot on the gas. I don't know about you, but we are fired up and ready to go, ready to win this election.
Well, Hillary Clinton may be ready to win it, but all indications at the moment are it may be going the other way to Donald Trump. In fact, Lane Bangerter, the director of the Trump for President campaign in Idaho, has told the Press Association, "I'm saying it's over. The voice of the people has risen up." Let's talk to Rhys Blakely, who is, of course, US editor for The Times. Rhys, a very good morning to you. Welcome to the show.
How are you doing?
Thanks very much indeed. What's the feeling where you are? And I don't know whether you've seen this quote from Lane Bangerter saying it's over. It's looking pretty good for Trump at the moment, isn't it?
It is looking very good for Trump. It's looking a lot better for Trump than anybody thought at this point in the evening who wasn't a Republican. I think probably the mood in the Clinton camp at this point is plunging as quickly as the U.S. stock market futures. What we've really seen is that Clinton hasn't been able to finish it quickly. She hasn't been able to land a knockout blow in Florida yet. That state is yet to be called, but it does look like there's a very good chance it will go to Trump. He is also looking strong in places like Wisconsin and Michigan. And that's going to be, those are two of the states that are going to be very important to watch. Those are places that have not voted for a Republican for president for decades. In the case of Wisconsin, since the Reagan era for Michigan, he's already won Ohio. That's given him a footprint in the Rust Belt of the Midwest. And really what that shows us is that when Mr. Trump was talking about appealing to blue-collar whites who were fed up with being left behind by the tides of globalization, who felt they didn't have a voice in the political system, that he really was onto something, that there are a lot of Americans out there who feel like that, and they appear to be coming to the polls. The other big state we've been watching so far is Florida. Lots of the early noise out of Florida had been about a big upsurge in Hispanic vote. For the last 48 hours, perhaps, we've been hearing about record numbers of Hispanics going to the polls. We thought that maybe Mr. Trump had awoken this slumbering giant of U.S. politics, Hispanic voters, and that that was going to really spell the end for his campaign in that big state, without which he doesn't really have a path to the 270 electoral college votes he needs to win the presidency. That doesn't seem to be the case so far. I think if you hear Republicans calling it at this stage, it's probably a little bit premature, but I can really imagine that the mood inside the Trump camp is pretty positive at the moment. The Democrats are feeling pretty gloomy.
That's right. I mean, Rice, everybody said, this man Trump, he can't get to the White House. He's no political experience, no political skills. But if he's identified, the core voter that he had to get on his side, and with his powers of oratory, which I don't believe Hillary Clinton's got, he's actually proving to be a very astute politician.
Yeah, well, this has always been one of the questions, hasn't it? Is did he really want to win? This is something that people asked in the early days of his candidacy, whether or not he'd gotten into this as a bit of a lark, whether or not this was something just to promote his brand. But as you say, he has tapped into things that, to anxieties amongst middle-class Americans who haven't seen a pay rise for 20 years. Yeah. Who are feeling as if their kids are not going to do as well as they have done. He's spoken to these industrial areas where the industry's moved on, or places where coal mining has moved on, and he said, I'm going to make America great again. I'm going to bring back jobs. Whether or not he can actually achieve that is a very, very different thing. But in terms of selling his message, he is a salesman. In terms of selling his message, he has done an absolutely fantastic job. That's what awaits to be seen. If he does win, is how much interest does he actually have in governing? I think that's
that's the question we were being asked earlier, and we were asking as well. And who will he appoint to his cabinet? We've already heard about Giuliani, possibly as Attorney General, but will he go for people outside of the Beltway, as it were? But I wanted to ask you, Reece, because I know you're on a bit of a short time frame here. Are you seeing any kind of parallels with the night of the referendum here on Brexit? Because we were seeing that kind of pattern a couple of hours ago. It started out as if it was going to be a Hillary night, and now it seems to be going the other way.
Well, yeah, I mean, there are obvious parallels. We've had Nigel Farage out in the States campaigning for Trump. We've now seen we've had the experts saying that Trump can't win. This will be seen as a big failure of the pollsters. What the pollsters are going to tell you if Trump wins is that they said it was going to be a close race. It is a close race. They're going to hold their hands up and say that they weren't calling it in one direction or the other. But yes, in terms of him speaking to people who feel as if they've been overlooked, people who have been left behind by the tides of globalization, whose jobs have been wiped out by automation, all those kinds of things, very, very obvious parallels with Brexit. This is a kind of a new groundswell of populism that we're seeing in the States. It's not an entirely new phenomenon. People like Pat Buchanan, Obama in 2008, he was no fan of NAFTA, the big trade agreement that Donald Trump's really torn into. But, Trump has taken things to a new level. He is...
And Rice, isn't there also, sorry to interrupt you, isn't there also an element of people who didn't want to admit they were going to be Trump supporters before this election?
Well, the phenomenon of a shy Trump vote is something that will be debated afterwards.
Shy Trump? Yeah.
It's hard to say. Well, shy Trump is, they talk about in the UK about shy Tories.
The silent majority.
Well, I mean, a slightly different silent majority probably, but people who didn't want to admit to pollsters that they were for Trump because there was, they talk about it sort of being a non-response bias, is what pollsters call it. You don't want to admit for whatever reason that you're for a certain candidate to the person. I mean, yes and no. I think maybe it's a little bit early for us to get into that. And let's face it, the night is young as well. Yeah. Clinton still has paths to the 270 votes she needs to win the White House. It doesn't look good for her at the moment, but let's not write her off quite yet.
No, we're hearing AP, by the way, calling Trump wins Florida, so that's quite significant, isn't it?
Very, very significant.
Right. Okay, well, that's significant. Yeah. I better go and write that in my newspaper.
I think you better have. Exactly. Reece, thank you very much indeed for taking the time to talk to us. Reece Blakely. Why do you keep calling him Rice, by the way?
What?
Why do you keep calling him Rice?
I've known him a number of years.
You've known him a number of years.
Yeah. He's in Washington. I lived there.
And he pronounces his name Rice, does he?
Listen, when you've got friends,
Well, why didn't you correct me and say, why are you calling him Reece?
Because that would have been, a bit embarrassing for you on air, so I didn't do it.
So when we ask him if his name is pronounced Rice or Reece, you'll be happy with that, really?
I wouldn't bother, mate, because he's such a nice chap that he never takes exception to it.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Now, we've got lots more coming up. We've got quite a few tweets as well to read out. We've been hearing, as we said earlier, that Lane Bangeter, director of the Trump for President campaign in Idaho Delta Press Association, I'm saying it's over. The voice of the people has risen up. Reece there just said he thinks that's probably slightly premature. However...
But you can't see it coming back now, Mike.
If he's won Florida, and it looks very much as though that's what the official count or the official projection now is suggesting. But, he still needs to win, I think, other states. He can, if he had lost Florida, he'd have been out.
But I can't see it coming back because of the statements coming out of the Hillary Clinton camp. They are defeatist statements.
Well, they
are very, very odd for this time of night, and I'll read them to you again. We have much to be proud of whatever happens. We have much to be proud of whatever happens tonight, and thank you to all our supporters for everything. Yeah. I mean, that is, I'm closing the door now and going home.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
Sure, but I mean, and they will have seen some of the sort of earlier projections that we haven't yet seen because they'll have their own research being done.
That's
right. Here's one from a CLC who says, my 5-year-old just asked, will Happy Meals go up if Trump gets in? And will dolls of him be given out as toys? That's probably a slightly frivolous question at this point.
Yeah.
But did you think we'd be here at this time, 5 to 4 in the morning? We were expecting there to be, around about 4 o'clock, a declaration of a winner, because that's what happened with Obama.
Yes.
We may not get it quite as early as that, but the key states, not just in Florida, but in Pennsylvania and in other places as well, still yet to
If your antennae are up, and ours are up, I'm telling you, it's all drifting towards... I'm telling you, Jimmy, all the signs are drifting towards a Trump victory.
Yeah.
And I'm not telling our millions of listeners Trump has won or anything like that. I'm saying that the feeling is overwhelmingly that Hillary Clinton is drifting away.
The feeling is the big mo is with Trump.
Absolutely. The big mo, the big momentum is with Trump.
Yeah. And with me still at the moment, because on the question on the Two Mikes Twitter page, who would make the best president of USA, who gets your vote, it's still me by 51 to 49.
It's closing, though. The gap is closing.
The gap is closing.
And I've been calling the Trump situation longer than old MG. So vote Porky, vote often in that poll, please. I think you'll find I've been on top of my game during the course of this programme, and we've still got 2 hours to go. I'll get even topper.
Topper?
Yeah.
Do you think that's possible?
Yeah.
All eyes on Michigan now, says Greenie. If Trump wins that, it is all over. So there's an awful lot to play for still, but it's still too early to call. It's a fascinating night. It's the Two Mikes election special. This is Talk Sport. What do you ought to envisage Donald Trump standing on the steps of Capitol Hill, saluting as he's being sworn in as the next president, the 45th president of the United States of America.
He won't actually be saluting. His right hand will be up like that, and he'll be taking the presidential oath.
Yes, he will.
And his wife, the lovely Mrs. Trump,
yes,
who speaks with a sort of foreign accent because she's foreign, will be standing next to him, looking admiringly into his eyes in the way that Hillary
Clinton for an end to
did.
immigration.
Sorry?
Calling for an end to immigration.
Yeah, but in the same way as I saw Hillary Clinton stare into the eyes of Bill Clinton when he was first inaugurated as the President of the United States of America some, 24 years ago?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We are, of course,
amazing.
the two mics.
Absolutely
This
amazing.
is an election special, and it could be one of the most shocking results in the history of politics around the world.
Shocking?
Donald
Why'd you
Trump.
say shocking?
Well, because nobody thought Donald Trump
Certainly
would win.
amazing.
Nobody
Certainly
thought
amazing.
that Donald Trump would win the presidency of the
You're being
United
a bit
States.
judgmental, aren't you? Calling it shocking.
It is shocking. Are you not shocked by Donald Trump as the next president?
I'm amazed.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm going to be shocked or not until I find out what sort of president he's going to be.
It is, of course, not over yet because there's still lots and lots of very important states to be counted. You are listening to the two mics, though. It is an election special with me, Mike Graham, and Mike Parry. I think at this time of tenseness and great anxiety, time to have a word with Sandy Wall. Sandy.
Yeah, it certainly panned out. It was an interesting night, would be putting it very, very mildly, would it not?
Indeed.
Exit polls, going back to that point of the evening where the first indications were saying this is a Hillary Clinton win. And then as the night has progressed, the Clinton camp has got more and more nervous. The Donald Trump camp has got more and more confident. The markets have certainly been reacting, looking as if it's going to be a Donald Trump victory.
Yeah, Dow Jones down nearly 700 points, I'm told.
It's an extraordinary movement economically. And the biggest moment we've had, I suppose, so far was that result from Ohio. And the cliche is where Ohio goes, the president goes, isn't it? That's the
I
said to be.
think president has won Ohio, haven't
I think there's been one since the Second World War, hasn't it, that didn't. And that's 18 college votes, and that's gone. These are all still officially projections because we get the actual formal declarations later. But certainly some of them, there's no way there is enough voting left to count to make it be anything but a correct result. So that's actually the only constituency, if you like, that has changed colour, that's gone from blue to red tonight.
1964, the last time Ohio was not Democratic.
But some of these other states that they thought were going to be a solid Hillary Clinton win, some of them still not in yet. Some of the results coming in very, very late that they expected to be completely solid. We are getting a whole raft now of the West Coast results coming in as well. Just recently, we've had California declaring, and this is absolutely expected, as a Hillary Clinton win. So if you look at the actual sheer numbers at the moment, we now have Hillary Clinton on 202, Donald Trump on 188, and it really looks now as if a lot of the attention is focused on Michigan and Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania has 20 seats to return. Michigan has 16, and if these don't go to Hillary Clinton, then it is looking like the mood music that's a Donald Trump win. May be correct.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Michigan very much a Democrat, likely, really, before the the election bandwagon started rolling. Astonishing.
Absolutely astonishing. Here's a good a take on it from Mick, who says, I think it's a good time for bricklayers to get their CVs updated and sent to the White House for the purposes of the wall building, obviously.
Yeah, well, exactly, I wonder how long it takes to build that wall. It's quite a long border.
Monty says this: if Clinton loses, she will be remembered as the worst politician in the history of world politics. I think that may well be true.
Yeah, I do.
If she's lost to Donald Trump.
Yeah.
But we haven't counted it out yet. Let's talk to Tyler Richards, who's down in Florida. He's from the University of Florida's Election Science Group. Let's find out what he makes of it all so far. Tyler, very good morning. Welcome to the show.
Hi, how are you?
Yeah, very well
good, thank
indeed.
you.
Now, the projection is that Trump is going to win Florida. It's been sort of backwards and forwards all night. What are you hearing?
I'm hearing that most of the national news stations are calling it for Trump at the moment. Broward County has a few votes that they haven't counted yet, but it looks like Trump's going to win Florida, which puts him in a really good spot if he's trying to win the presidency, which he is.
Well, it does. I mean, we were told that it's the biggest voter turnout in American history in Florida, and one of the things that we also learned was that the Latino vote was out very much in force. This would tend to suggest that perhaps not every Latino has voted against Trump.
Yes, that does seem to be the case. So one thing that you have to look at when you're looking at Florida is you don't just have to look at the Hispanic turnout. but you also have to look at the Cuban turnout. Oftentimes, Cuban will tend to be Republican because they oftentimes are, first or second generation Americans who come from, the Castro or the communist Cuba.
Mm-hmm. What do you make, Tyler, of the statements coming out of the Clinton camp, which are, we have much to be proud of, whatever happens here tonight, and thank you to all our supporters for everything? They sound to me like statements being issued by somebody who's just about to pack up their bags and push off back to, their home in New York.
It definitely does sound like that. So the way that national campaigns work is they tend to have a much better idea about how the race is going to turn out long before these, things like CNN actually get around to it. So they probably
Why is that? Why is that? Do they have internal polling organisations?
They do, and they have hundreds of millions of dollars behind them, so that definitely helps.
Yeah, exactly.
And from the point of view of the campaigning in Florida and what you saw the effects of the campaigning being in various different groups, I mean, did Hillary make mistakes down there? Was Trump just better than her in his campaigning? How was that perceived?
That's really hard to tell. I mean, I don't necessarily know who did a better job of campaigning, and most people think that a lot of the campaign that Donald Trump ran was traditionally, by any sort of political science standards, you would call it bad. But that doesn't turn out to be the case if you're looking at the way that the Electoral College is looking right now. So I can't really say.
Tyler, in addition to losing, if Hillary Clinton loses, in addition to losing, will she also be blamed for opening the door to the most radical Republican president of all time?
Yes. So personally, I don't think that anyone should be blamed but the American voter. Yeah. I don't think that you should necessarily blame a candidate for a loss.
Yes.
But that's what's going around right now is people are saying, oh, why didn't the Democrats choose a better candidate?
Exactly.
Oh, why didn't the Republicans choose any of the other 17 options that they had in the primary?
Yeah. No, that's
you
exactly
can blame a whole lot of people.
And I mean, her behaviour over the period of time she's been, Secretary of State and even back to First Lady, presumably doesn't appeal to the American people, and therefore she's responsible for that herself, isn't she?
I mean, apparently it definitely doesn't appeal to the majority of voters at the current moment. So, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
It's fascinating times, isn't it? I mean, is there any way at which, at this point, do you think, in terms of what we're watching as it's all coming in, that Hillary can come back on this?
It is a very difficult map, a path to a Clinton victory. So, in the case that she would win Michigan and Wisconsin, as well as pulling out victories in places like Iowa and Utah and Colorado. These places are places that Republicans tend to win either way, especially those locations in those Rust Belt areas like Iowa and Michigan that have lots of these white working class voters that seem to trend so far towards that Donald Trump personality.
Sure. And realistically,
so
Tyler,
it's very difficult.
Sorry, realistically, Tyler, just one last question. When do you think we'll see an actual result in Florida?
In Florida, the entire vote isn't going to be counted until early tomorrow morning at best. But generally, if you look at CNN, if you look at Politico, who's already called Florida, most have it already done.
Okay. All right. Well, listen, fantastic. Thanks very much for talking to us. Tyler Richards there from the University of Florida Election Science Group.
Right.
A great tweet here from Chris who says it's all looking very, very real. Back to the Future never ceases to amaze me with its comparisons to real life. And he's shown a picture from Back to the Future 2 of Biff Tanner's Pleasure Paradise.
Yes.
Who's obviously kind of comparing to Donald Trump.
Yeah, absolutely.
The guy who sort of managed to win all the betting because of the betting book.
Sure.
But let's talk to Jay Caruso, Assistant Managing Editor for Red State over in North America. Red State, I should say, conservative blog over in the States. We'll find out from him what he thinks is happening. Jay, a very good morning to you. Welcome.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Yeah,
now,
Jay, good to have
this
you.
is all unfolding as we speak in a way which I think people weren't perhaps expecting. Florida projected to go for Trump. We haven't had confirmation of that yet, really. He's won Ohio. Can he win Michigan, I guess is the question.
Yeah, in fact, Florida has been called for Trump by several organizations. So he is going to win Florida, and he has a good shot of winning Michigan. And the way he's winning some of these other states, if he wins Michigan, he is likely going to win the election.
Right.
Which, yeah, to be honest with you, we're sitting here. There's a bunch of us working here, and everybody is just shocked that it's going this way.
Yeah. Absolutely. But, Jay, people have said, Mr. Trump, he's going to be the first president, never had any political experience before he got in. His very last speech, because my colleague and I were watching it here in England this morning, was in Grand Rapids in Michigan. So if he takes that state, could that one speech have just turned, that small percentage that was needed to give him what's going to be the key state that might get him the presidency?
Yeah, well, it's amazing. It wouldn't be because it's not just Michigan. It's kind of they had a Rust Belt strategy, which is to say we're going to flip. Forget about the South. We know we're going to win the South, so we're going to try and go for Ohio and Michigan and Pennsylvania, Iowa, and all these other states, and Wisconsin. He still has. There's a chance he could win Wisconsin.
Indeed.
And it seems like it may have worked.
Exactly, and his political skills also extend to the fact that he has identified a core group of people in the United States to whom he would appeal, and gone after them. And it looks like he may be right.
Yeah, I'm one of the most. I've said I'm not a Trump supporter. And so this to me is shocking, but it's true. Who would ever think that a New York billionaire would be the guy that could go out and appeal to middle-class working people in the Rust Belt states?
Absolutely.
Well, that's the interesting thing.
He's going to do it.
And one of the things he talked about in that speech in Grand Rapids was about Obamacare and the price hike that happened and the price hike that would happen if, in fact, he did not win the election. Is that going to emerge as one of the more stupid things that happened from the Democrat side, from the Obama side, that actually putting up prices was going to alienate people?
Well, look at what happened. Ever since Obamacare passed, how many elections Democrats have lost? Aside from the 2012 election, they lost control of the House, they lost control of the Senate, they have lost state houses across the amazing thing is, and this is what is so incredible, is over the last couple of months, all anybody has talked about is how the Republican Party is nearly dead. And now, if everything wins, if everything happens tonight, they're going to emerge as the most powerful party in 50 years, holding the presidency, the Senate, the House, state houses, and governorships.
It's going to be amazing. Do you think, Jay, that he will ever carry out his threat to go after Hillary Clinton if he becomes the President of the United States?
I think that he will appoint an attorney general and will likely direct that attorney general to take a very, very close look at Hillary Clinton. Probably not so much the emails. I would think more the Clinton Foundation is probably what
we talked about that earlier.
Some legal troubles, yes.
The allegation that $3 million from the Clinton Foundation was used to fund Clinton's, daughter's Chelsea's marriage.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah, and that sort of thing.
Taking $1 million from Qatar, which is not on the State Department list of state-sponsored terrorism, but they let ISIS operate within their borders with impunity. So. Yeah. It's just as bad.
Yeah. And what does this mean as well, Jay? Because if it does go as we think it is going, and Donald Trump does indeed take the White House, storm the White House, is what some of his political supporters have said. I mean, will this have a sort of domino effect on what he's described as, the corrupt political system? I suppose what I'm saying is that will the people power becomes so overwhelming that actually you'll see a whole different type of senator running for office, a different type of representative in the House, and all that.
Well, if you look at it, he's if he wins, he has completely changed the dynamic of what Republicans need to do in order to win elections. He is winning the votes that Democrats have won since 1992. And he's doing it in a way that's the most unconventional way you could ever think of. It's going to baffle political analysts and political experts for years, but he's going to totally change how these things are done.
That's right. Now, Jay, why is the stock market tumbling on the possibility that a Republican might become the President of the United States of America? Normally it shoots up the other way because they believe in lower taxes.
Right, but one thing markets don't like is uncertainty. And so with the polls showing that Hillary Clinton was likely going to win and now Donald Trump is going to win, that's just uncertainty.
Sorry.
So naturally, stuff is going to tumble.
Yeah, I see. Just through uncertainty. But I mean, if he is a tax cutter, how will that sort of marry up with his sort of rather broad but unspecific threats about trade tariffs?
Well, that's the whole thing. I don't know what's going to happen with that because, if he's saying he's going to cut taxes, but he's also going to be making threats about, implementing tariffs and and saying he's going to rework trade deals, I don't know what that'll do with the market.
No, exactly.
And as far as his preparedness for the White House, I mean, just in terms of his businesses that he runs and the other things that he has going on in his life, I mean, is he actually prepared to be president? I know that you said it would have been a colossal waste of time and money if he didn't win it, but do you think he's actually prepared, with policy, with a team to move right in, or is he now sitting around going, blimey, we better get this organised?
That's a good question. I mean, is anybody actually really prepared? I mean, Barack Obama was a state senator for a few years, and a United States senator for 3 years before he decided to run for president. If Donald Trump becomes president, he's going to have people advising him, and hopefully he has the same smart people advising him to take Mike Pence as his vice presidential running mate instead of Chris Christie, who I don't think would have been a very good choice. And who was advising him late in the campaign to stay on message, not go out and yell at people on Twitter, but to kind of continue to talk about Obamacare and trade and the economy. And, so if he does that and he picks the right people, then, working with the Republican Senate and House, who knows what kind of success he could have.
Okay.
Indeed.
Well, listen, that's fantastic. Thank you very much indeed. Yes. Jay Caruso there talking to us from Red State Conservative blog. Just seeing a projection for Pennsylvania, there was 73% of the votes counted. Hillary leading there by a couple of percentage points, it says, which would be a big help to her if she can get that one in.
Oh,
Currently,
very much so,
it's 209 to 194 in his favour, 270 in her favour, I should say, sorry. 270 votes needed to win, of course, Electoral College votes they are.
Indeed.
Let's go back to Alex Dibble, who's still at the US Embassy party. There must be an interesting mood there at the moment, Alex.
Yeah. Mike, a completely different atmosphere from when I last spoke to you. I mean, it's incredible. People just in absolute shock. I mean, and a lot of people headed home earlier thinking that Clinton had won it, that there was no way that Trump was going to come back, and they're all at home now watching on TV wishing they were here, because they can say, I was there, but they can't anymore because they've gone home.
Right.
And now the people who are left are just in a complete state of shock, trying to work out what we're going to do in a post 2016 US election world, in a Trump world, for goodness sake. So a completely different atmosphere, and I think people are just beginning to comprehend the consequences of it.
Sorry, Mike.
Sorry, I was going to say, I mean, is it possible that that there is still people there hoping that Clinton can come back on this one? I mean, there's a projection that she might still hold on to Pennsylvania.
Yeah, I think it looks like she will still hold on to Pennsylvania, and one or two people are thinking, can she grab Wisconsin rather, and can she potentially grab Michigan? And but I think they're clutching at straws at this stage, and I think one or two people here are essentially just doing exactly what the Trump supporters were doing 2 or 3 hours ago, which is trying to put a positive spin on things when really we all know it's going the other way. I mean, we don't want to sound too stupid in case it swings back in the other direction, but at the moment it's looking like it's going to be Trump. And I think the interesting thing from my point of view in the last couple of hours has been seeing that how Clinton has failed to pick up the votes that Obama has won in the last 2 elections. So even in the states where she might have won the state and she still might have picked up all those electors, she still hasn't won the same amount of votes that Obama had, and that has been a telling sign for the rest of the country where that trend is meaning that she's losing states and therefore losing electors.
Do you know what, Alex? I think there'll be terrific recriminations within the whole Democratic movement, because they're going to say, aren't they, tomorrow morning, why did we let her run as our candidate when there was clearly so much antipathy towards her throughout the country?
It's going to be a completely bizarre thing. I mean, I know so many parallels have been made about Brexit, and I think it can be overdone. But, at the same time, I see why that happens. At the same time, I wonder whether the same thing is going to happen in the States, where tomorrow morning, or this morning, I'm getting confused. I forgot what time it is.
Yeah, don't worry, you won't be getting any sleep for hours yet.
I know. People are going to turn around, maybe in the similar Brexit, and say, well, if I'd known he was actually going to win, I wouldn't have voted for him.
Yeah.
I almost voted for him as almost like a protest vote. I didn't think he was actually going to do it.
Yeah, sure.
And then everyone else turns around and says, you idiot.
Yes.
What on earth are you doing? So I just wonder whether that's going to happen, or whether, the people who did vote for Trump are going to say brilliant and we're all absolutely ecstatic.
I think the time has now come, possibly, if he does win, for those people who say, you idiot, you shouldn't have done that, to take a back seat and actually just watch what's going on, because this is now, a phenomenon that has happened not only in this country, but also in America, where people are just fed up to the back teeth of being told what to do by people they perceive to be out of touch.
Yeah.
And it's bizarre that they think Trump is in touch, but he's more in touch than everybody else.
I think that's an incredibly valid point, and we're seeing this, as you say, across the Atlantic, but also in other parts of the world as well. And at what point does the political class begin to reflect the people that it's meant to be representing, or re-reflect? Because people will say, there was a time that my politicians represented me, but that was a long time ago, and I want it back. And how, it's a big ship to change politics, and how slowly can you turn it, and even massive events like this, massive moments like this, still may not begin to change the ship. I mean, people are still saying to me, well, even if Donald Trump is elected, he is still only one part of one of the three parts of the US government, and that cannot therefore make so much of a difference over 4 years.
Well, it will if they're all Republicans.
Of course it will. He's the most important.
The Senate will be Republican, and the House will probably be Republican.
And he's the most important part.
So it could all be over for you lily-livered types, I'm afraid, Alex.
Absolutely,
Thank you very much
so.
indeed. Alex Dibble there reporting in from the US Embassy Party, where people are in shock. We've also heard from the Republicans over in America, who are Republicans not exactly in support of Trump, but who are also in shock. So your kind of ridiculous statement to me about why it's such a shocking situation is now borne out.
No, I thought you were using the word shocking as you were, it's going to be a shocking future for America. Not that it was shocking.
I'm talking about shocking that Donald Trump is in this position.
I think it's an amazing situation as a more accurate reflection of it. And remember, I was told by a very senior politician tonight, I'm absolutely on point.
He was not a senior politician. He's a member of the Democratic State House.
Yeah, senior politician. On point.
Yeah, right.
Porky,
First time for everything.
on point.
First time for everything. You're not on point in our poll, I'm afraid, though. It's gone now the other way, 52 to 48.
What?
In my favour.
Gerrymandering.
Donald Trump has now officially won Florida. I don't believe that is a prediction. I believe that is a result. Now Michigan becomes very, very important. Pennsylvania too. And, of course, much, much more to come here on TalkSport. Right now, here's Sandy Wall with an update.
Yes, these body blows to the Hillary Clinton camp coming in the last, hour or so. Florida, Ohio, North Carolina apparently getting a particularly strong reaction. Analysts saying there was no way the Republican could win the race to the White House to Donald Trump without those key states. The New York Times now giving the Republican candidate a 92% chance of becoming the next president. Hillary Clinton's aides saying they are expecting a long night. Both candidates watching developments in New York, where large parties are planned. The markets, the money markets, shares have been moving. There's a great deal of volatility as the night has progressed. We are actually now coming down to just one or two really key states that could be decisive, and it's looking increasingly as if the maths all focusing on Michigan. 16 votes as electoral college representatives will be returned by Michigan. The last numbers I've seen on the percentage votes, there's still quite a lot to count for Michigan, are putting it at 47.7% Donald Trump, 47.2% Hillary Clinton. Now, there is just the possibility that we could end up with the way the maths is stacking up, a 269-269 tie. at the end of tonight. All the results have to go, in inverted commas, the right way for that to happen. So if Wisconsin goes to Donald Trump, which some of the predictions are saying, Hillary Clinton wins both of Pennsylvania and Michigan, we could end up with this situation, which is pretty much unprecedented. There are
And what
legal,
would they do in that
there are
situation?
legal and constitutional plans in place. Now, we're all talking about these electoral college votes being declared as a lump sum, as it were, on these. There is no legal requirement for that to happen. So what actually happens in December is the college votes are literally posted in.
Yeah.
So we've had these declarations, and these votes are then actually cast, and they're posted in, and we get the declarations. There is the possibility, if just one of those votes changes, and as I say, there's no legal requirement on them to stick to what those vote was, that could declare us a result. If that still is a tie, we then move into a situation potentially where each state gets one representative. And of course, if we're looking at just the pure colour geographically of the map of America, there is far more red than blue there.
Yeah.
So it's hugely interesting night because the turnout has been so enormous. Things haven't quite gone the way the pundits and the pollsters were saying at the beginning of the evening. It's coming down to a knife edge now, to coin all the cliches in the book, and all eyes really focusing increasingly in on Michigan as the
And again,
moment
I know
of decisive.
you can't always answer these questions, but timing of a result there?
We thought we might have it by now. We thought we might be able to confidently say, yes, this is the way it's gone. I mean, as we say, 92% chance, the New York Times is saying we can call it. But we thought that would be some time ago. The Michigan vote was still only, I think, about 47-ish% counted. So there's a while to go yet. I think we're a way off yet.
Okay, Sandy, thank you very much indeed. Fascinating night. Not at all like anybody expected. It looks like Trump has won Florida. If he wins Michigan, it might be all over for Hillary Clinton. Let's talk to John Labatillo, a man who you and I, Mike, have been talking to
Absolutely.
for the best part of the last year or so, really,
Indeed.
as these campaigns have unfolded. Many projections have been made. Some of them have been correct, some of them have not. John, welcome to the show. Very good morning to you. What a night, I suppose.
Shocking. Let me put it that way. All of America is just shocked over this thing.
Right. But I guess the underestimating of Trump's popularity, the underestimating perhaps of how good his campaign was. I mean, unless, of course, you're going to tell me that you see some way back for Hillary. I'm not sure I do.
I think Trump's going to win. Feels like it to me. I know there's still several states to go, but if I had to choose which one I'd rather be Trump right now than Hillary.
Absolutely right.
Sure. John, when you say America's shocked, well, half America's not shocked because half America is actually quite happy.
No, that's not true because the polls showed all along that even the people who were voting for Trump thought Hillary was going to win.
Right.
I mean, yeah, it's like 60-some-odd% all along thought she would win. Didn't mean they wanted her to win, but they thought she was going to win.
So you're saying there was a lot of protest vote involved in voting for Trump, but it's a bit like the Brexit over here in England. Actually, I just want to give the government a bit of a smack in the face, but of course, I don't expect Trump to win.
Yep, I think that's that. And they wanted him to win, the ones who voted for him, of course, and they're going to be very happy about it. I think they're shocked that it's happening. I talked to people tonight who voted for him, didn't think he would win. Mm-hmm. They're ecstatic, and they're ecstatic that it looks like he's going to win.
Well, watching him early yesterday morning in Michigan, making his kind of final speech to the converted, you know, it was almost as though he finally believed that he could win it when he said, you know, it'll be a colossal waste of time and money if I don't win. Yeah. Whereas until probably, I don't know, a couple of months ago, he was such an underdog that you couldn't necessarily see it happening.
Absolutely. I didn't see it happening. I'll be very honest with you. He had no campaign. He had the winds of change, the Brexit, the anti-establishment thing. That was here. But he kept stepping all over it by his stupid statements and behavior. Yep. But the thing is still so strong, it powered him to victory. And he's going to win. He's going to win all these states. He's ahead in Michigan, Wisconsin, Florida. They've projected Florida already. He's going to win all of them. He's going to be the president.
I think you're right, John. So a man who was mocked for the fact that he had no political experience, he had no political knowledge, he didn't know his way around the Beltway, he has actually turned out to be a very astute politician by, A, identifying the group of people in America who would vote for him, and B, small things like Mike and I have just been commenting on. The last speech he gave this morning, a few hours before the polls opened, in Grand Rapids in Michigan, a key state which he now looks like he's going to take.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking at these numbers. Michigan's really close. So it's conceivable it could go the other way. But,
yeah, but I mean, do you see what I mean? I mean, are you
13,000 votes? So, but we don't know. But
are you going to give him
any more states leaning towards him that are left than the other way around? So, I think he's going to win the thing.
So you're going to give him credit then as being a good politician?
Oh, he's always been. What he's really good at is marketing.
Yeah.
Politician, a little different, but if you want to say he's a good politician, great. But he's a great marketeer. He knows how to sell, and he knew what they wanted to hear this year.
Yep.
They wanted to blow up the whole damn thing, and he may get the chance to do it. I might add, with a Republican House and a Republican Senate.
Yeah. Now, that's what I wanted to ask you about next, John, because you're an insider there. You know how that business works. I mean, if he is the president and if he does have the Senate and the House on his side, you know, in terms of his kind of policy making, what can he do? What will he do? Because we're not really sure, as you've said from his campaign, what policy he's in favour of. We know roughly what he believes in, but what will he actually do? What will he be able to do?
Do pretty much anything he wants. If he wants to build a wall, they'll build a wall.
But would he, for example, need to pass that through the Senate and the House to do that?
Oh, yeah, that'll pass. That's not a hard one, that one. He can do a lot of stuff. Tax changes that he wanted to do, he can do that. And I don't think any of that's going to be that upsetting. I think where people are going to be upset is, number one, our allies are going to be really worried about what they're dealing with. Who are they dealing with in Donald Trump? Because they don't like the fact that this is a guy who's been cozying up to Vladimir Putin and who's been saying, well, I may not enforce Article 5 of NATO and all that stuff.
Yeah.
That's going to send shivers through America's allies. And America's adversaries are going to be, I think, licking their chops about dealing with Donald Trump.
I mean,
that this guy is just a joke.
Can't you look at it the other way, John? Can't you say that tension now between America and Russia, which has been growing for the last 4 or 5 years as Vladimir Putin tries to flex the Russian muscles again, that tension now will recede?
Yeah, it might. But it won't be good. The tension is because Putin has been misbehaving, and the tension is going to recede, as you put it, because we're not going to care anymore that he's misbehaving. He can get away with it.
Yeah, but that is the bizarre thing, isn't it? And what about the Secretary of State that he might appoint? Who would that likely be?
I have no idea. I don't think they have a clue. I mean, it's been said.
Maybe Gary Busey.
Yeah. I don't know the names of any other Republicans.
Well, no, but it's not just that.
Gary Busey, yeah.
Gary Busey.
I know that it's been talked about for months that all the regular Republicans who've served in these types of jobs before would not do it for Trump because they don't believe Trump would listen to them.
Yeah, well, he's president now, might be.
Well, he's not yet. He's not yet. Well, John, it's been a fascinating roller coaster ride. Well, I'm sure we'll be speaking to you again very shortly because we'll find out what, in fact, has been happening over the course of the last few hours. Because Trump is now predicted to win Georgia. He's predicted to win Iowa as well. It's 209 to 229 in Trump's favour. John Le Batellier there, former congressman, helping us out with what he thinks will happen under a new Trump leadership. Let's talk to Malise Sundstrom, chairman of Republicans Overseas. Malise, thank you very much indeed for taking the time to talk to us. We're all sort of still waiting to see if indeed what we think is going to happen is going to happen. Are you confident of a Trump victory?
I am. We're cautiously optimistic. We're excited.
Sorry, are you getting information we haven't got, Melise, on that one?
No, the trend just looks very good for us right now. We're all bleary-eyed over here at the U.S. Embassy looking at the returns, but...
Sure, but, I mean, you know, the Republicans have their own polling organisations, which are usually a lot more accurate than the networks. So are you getting some information through that?
No, I don't trust... I think a few pollsters might be out of work tomorrow.
Well, they might be. They might be in the broader spectrum.
Well, I think the whole polling business has been under scrutiny now since certainly in this country they got it wrong on the referendum on Brexit. They got it wrong on the last general election as well. And similarly over there, they're not exactly covering themselves in glory. You wonder whether any of these pollsters actually know what they're doing.
Yeah,
yeah, absolutely. Melise, do you feel as good about Hillary Clinton not being the next president of the United States as you do about Donald Trump, your boy, becoming the president of the United States of America if it works out that way?
Yes, I was never going to vote for Clinton. I was actually undecided for a while and came for Trump at the very end, perhaps like many others. But it was never a question with Clinton. I had actually worked on Haiti with USAID, with Secretary Clinton and her team. And I got to see kind of the mishandling. I had a front row seat to the mishandling of a response and kind of the blurred lines between the Clinton Foundation and her administration. I think Bill Clinton at that time was UN Special Envoy.
Right.
So I think many people are confused by that. I have that personal experience. I also worked on a campaign in Massachusetts where a Republican governor, now in Massachusetts, one of the bluest states in the country, he ran against a woman. The woman expected to win. She counted on the Democratic machine, and she counted on the fact that she was a woman to win, and she didn't, give it her all or get the buy-in that she needed. And now this governor has the highest approval rating in the country. So it's really interesting to look at. We want the best person. I honestly, these candidates aren't ideal for many people. But he may be the right person in the right place at the right time.
Well, it'll certainly be entertaining, that's for sure. Melise, thank you very much indeed. Melise Sundstrom, chairman of the Republicans Overseas UK, who says she had some pretty good reasons not to vote for Hillary. Sounds like she's lost her voice there with all the cheering down at the US Embassy.
Well, what's quite astonishing is Melise is chairman of the Republicans Overseas UK. She said she might have voted for Hillary Clinton at one stage and decided she wasn't going, she was going to vote for Trump.
Yeah, because she worked with the Clintons.
Exactly.
Well, it sounds to me like she's been a Democrat in her time and she's now moved across to the
Republicans. Exactly. She's a crossbencher.
Yeah, which is all right. You're allowed to do that. I mean,
I tell you what, millions of people in America have been crossbenchers tonight and swapped sides, without a shadow of a doubt.
Here's one from Lee, who says, didn't the Simpsons once predict Donald Trump as president some years ago? They may well have done. We got lots more coming up. We are the Two Mikes. This is our election special. Donald Trump, could he be the next president? Looks that way. This is Talk Sport.
America is the home of the hypocrite. America is the home of the hypocrite. America is the home of the hypocrite. American dreams are full of it.
Talk Sports teamed up with Asper's Casino at Westfield, Stratford City to give 4 lucky winners a chance to win a 4-star hotel getaway to London, as well as money towards your travel. You'll also receive £200 in credit to spend at Asper's Casino, which can be used across the casino, including food and drink.
That's absolutely right. This is all to celebrate Asper's Casino's 5th birthday. Simply enter at talksport.com/competitions and join us on the Sports Bar on November the 18th to find out if you're one of the lucky 4.
To further celebrate their 5th birthday, Asper's are also giving customers a chance to win one of 5 cars just by visiting the casino during their birthday celebrations. For more information, visit aspersstratford.co.uk.
Desperation level, even though my nose don't work, I smell trouble.
Now, in addition to all the excitement going on over in the United States of America, both campaign headquarters, of course, in New York City. We'll be going over to them shortly to find out what the Clinton mood is, what the Trump mood is. Trump's are looking very, very kind of quietly confident, or maybe not so quietly confident
right now.
Look
at the way the numbers are stacking up as well.
Yeah, exactly right. We're not far off the 270. Now, at the top of this show, we spoke to James Dean, US business editor for The Times, who's with the Clinton camp in New York. Let's find out now what the mood is there. James, welcome back to the show. How's things at the Clinton HQ?
I think the mood has changed significantly since I last spoke to you. There are people slowly leaving the convention centre right now. I'm just stood outside, in fact. There's a few people leaving the convention centre, those who are actually able to get inside. There still is a big crowd outside at the moment, kind of looking up at a big screen, watching the results come through. But that's thinned out significantly since I was last here, and I think people are beginning to realise that this election's going a certain way, and that way is a Donald Trump win.
Yeah, what we found astonishing, James, was the messages coming out from Hillary Clinton's camp quite early in the night. You know, messages like, you know, thank you so much, everybody, for all your help. You know, whatever happens tonight, this has been a fantastic experience. I mean, it all sounds like it's almost resignation to the fact that she ain't going to win.
Well, what was quite interesting is, I think it was about an hour ago, maybe slightly more, Katy Perry was up on stage. She was giving a kind of chat, and you'd have thought, she'd go. She went up to a roar. You'd have thought she'd have kind of got everyone going a bit, and she delivered what sounded to me a bit like a concession speech. She talked about reconciliation between supporters of Donald Trump and supporters of Hillary Clinton, families that might have been split by the vote. And there didn't seem to be much joy in there at all. And from that point onwards, all the news networks have been calling state after state for Donald Trump, all of these battleground states. So, I think it's certainly soured a lot.
And where is the candidate, as it were? Because that will be the question I suppose people will be asking. Where is Hillary Clinton? I mean, in the last election, Barack Obama was declared the victor around about 4 o'clock our time, which is approximately 50 minutes ago. I mean, is there a likelihood that she might concede within the next hour or so?
There's an absolute possibility, yes. Because, of the few kind of straws that they were clutching at, the few states that they thought they might have been able to turn around, they're all looking like they're going towards Trump. So I'd imagine that a concession is going to come tonight at some point. Whether it's in the next hour or not, I don't know. But, what's interesting as well is that all of the major US news networks, I've been flicking through a few of them, all of them have shifted into election post-mortem mode now. There's nobody talking about what might happen here. This is all an analysis of, what happened, what went wrong for Clinton, what went right for Trump. Yeah. And I have to say, having actually been in London through the Brexit vote, there are so many echoes of that. There are so many similarities of what happened here tonight. It's almost scary.
Yeah. One of the questions that's going to be asked, surely, James, is going to be, will Donald Trump, as president, actually go after Hillary Clinton in the manner in which he threatened he would if he became the boss?
That's another thing with him. We just don't know what's going to happen. There is, you might say that his bluster and all of his kind of election pantomime, that was all about whipping up anger, whipping up votes for him. It was all a bit theatrical. Maybe he'll calm down and actually, I don't know, maybe be a bit more presidential. Maybe, you never know. We'll have to wait for his what will probably be his acceptance speech tonight, or his winning speech tonight. He might offer a kind of an olive branch to Hillary Clinton. He might offer an olive branch to many people he's insulted, but we simply don't know. He's that unpredictable. So
well, he is.
Probably were staying up for
And his campaign has not exactly been sort of punctuated by moments of sort of modesty of any kind.
Humility.
If he becomes president of the United States, you can't imagine him suddenly becoming less outrageous or less sort of bombastic, can you? We've had a couple of tweets here, James, saying if you're trying to put it into perspective for people in Britain, it's a bit like Alan Sugar becoming Prime Minister.
It's not far off, exactly. I think it's true to say that he has no experience in high-level politics. He hasn't served in the military, and I think that's the first time that America would elect someone with those kind of credentials. So it's completely, it's a huge upset. It's a huge upset here, but there's a lot of very happy people just a few blocks down the road in the Hilton.
Absolutely right. Well, listen, James, thank you very much indeed. James Dean, US business editor for The Times, reporting in from the Clinton camp at the HQ, where people are drifting off, a bit like the Everton fans were at the 5-0 defeat down at Stamford Bridge. Before the end of time.
How trite to compare a football match in England, and they don't even play it much in America, with the American
soccer,
the American elections. How trite is that? Just to get a dig in against me.
It was not any kind of dig at all.
What a cheap shot that was.
Absolutely not
Very
a dig.
cheap shot.
No, all I wanted to do was to try and bring it home to people.
Yeah.
These guys are there. They're supposed to be getting ready for a victory party.
Yeah.
There's people weeping now there. You can see signs
lot
of
of
that.
people weeping, actually,
there's
yeah.
people who are going to be in a state of shock. People leaving, going home early.
Actually, I'm going to be weeping soon because I don't know if I told you, but just before we came to air tonight, my back suddenly went.
Well, not only did you tell me, but
yeah.
it became very obvious the way you were limping about.
I'm not joking. It's like somebody had just, stuck a red hot poker into my back because...
Well, I did say you were playing through the pain at the top of the show.
Yeah, and I'm now in agony. I'm now in absolute agony, but I don't like to talk about it.
No.
You are right. We are now entering a brave new world or a frightening new world or whatever one you call it. But, I mean, this is just... It's so unlikely, or it was so unlikely 18 months ago, that nobody knows what's going to happen next.
No.
Because we've just heard from an expert, James Dean, that Mr. Trump has no experience of high-level politics.
No.
So how will he approach it? If he approaches it in the same
I'll tell you what's interesting,
unconventional way as the campaign, anything could happen.
Well, I'll tell you what's interesting, though. I mean, people make a lot of the fact that he's got no experience in politics, except what he has got experience in is winning things, and he has got experience in taking over companies. Now, you might not like some of the way that he's done that. You may not like the way that he hasn't exactly been what you would describe as the man of the people at every single turn. But he's a pretty smart guy. He created a television show out of nothing. He became a very popular television host out of nothing.
And he is a winner.
Well, he is a winner, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
And whether he's not always done so well with things like Trump Stakes and the Trump University.
Yeah, but as I said, Richard Branson used to have sort of, Virgin Bridal, Virgin Vodka and all that kind of stuff. Entrepreneurs don't always succeed in every project they launch.
No, they don't. And as you've often said, many politicians in this country and in other countries are, complete and utter charlatans.
They are.
They talk a good game, but they don't actually do anything.
Yeah.
Many of them we've often accused of actually not being able to get a job outside of politics.
That's right.
And he's basically taken them on at their own game and beaten them, as it looks like. So, I mean, there's nothing to suggest that, because everything's been going so well during the rest of the time in world politics, that he's going to come in and it's all going to go horribly wrong.
Isn't there going to be an interesting relationship between our Foreign Secretary, who is, of course, Boris Johnson...
Bojo.
Yeah, and Mr. Trump?
Well, I mean, Bojo foolishly said that he didn't want him to come... He didn't want to go anywhere near New York in case he ran into Donald Trump.
Exactly.
Well, I think he's going to find... I mean, Theresa May, far cleverer, actually
much cleverer,
wished success to both Trump and Clinton. And, of course, she was then pilloried for that. And people would say, I think it was Tim Farron, actually, who was on with us.
It was,
earlier on, that Liberal
How could she possibly,
wants there to be a referendum every 5 minutes. Said, how dare she issue encouragement to Donald Trump. Which is entirely the right thing to do.
Of course it is.
It's going to be very interesting. I mean, Boris Johnson, and the idea of Boris Johnson and Donald Trump meeting up, I think the hair alone would get in the way, wouldn't it? Now, we're coming up to the final hour of the show. Will we see Hillary Clinton conceding before 6 a.m?
Well, it'd be great if she
or
could.
Will she do it during the Alan Brazil Sports Breakfast? That'd be my question.
It'd be great if she could. Not because I'm taking sides on this, but if we could actually wrap up our show at 6 o'clock with a new United States president already in place. Well, not in place. He's not in place till the inauguration in January, but actually voted in. It would be terrific.
Yeah, absolutely right. This is Talk Sport. It's the Two Mikes election special. More coming up. Well, if you're just waking up, you might be in for a bit of a shock because it looks as though Donald Trump may well have won the 45th presidential election in the United States. We are the Two Mikes. He's Mike Parry. I'm Mike Graham. This is an election special for Talk Sport and Talk Radio. Throughout the night, we've been covering it for you, and the key states have come in. Trump wins Florida. He wins Ohio. He wins Iowa. He wins North Carolina. We're still waiting for Pennsylvania. We're still waiting as well for some of the other big states. Michigan is going to be very, very key as well. It's been a big night of drama. We haven't heard from either of the candidates as yet, but we're told that the mood at Clinton's HQ in New York City is very, very muted indeed. You're listening to Two Mikes election special with me, Mike Graham, and Mike Parry. Lots Lots of great tweets coming in as well. One from Becky saying Trump may have to build a wall to keep his own people in. And that's absolutely true. I mean, there are some reports that the Canadian immigration website has crashed, which may or may not be true. Also, of course, they might be building a wall in the middle of Manhattan because when Trump arrived to vote earlier on in the day, he was roundly booed by a load of people who are not in favour of Donald Trump. The states on the sort of coasts, as you well know, Mike, you know, New York all the
so
way down,
liberal, unbelievable.
Are very much in the Democratic camp.
They'll want another civil war type situation.
Well, I don't think they will. I mean, I think that might have been the way it would have gone had Trump lost. Yeah, but
they'll all, withdraw support.
Let's not use the word civil war. They've had one of those already. Sandy War is here, of course, has been all night, keeping us updated with all the news you need to know. Sandy, what's the situation?
Well, let's sort of walk you through the night as it panned out, because very conscious that people will be waking up at this time of the morning that haven't been with us all night. Shame on you. It's been an extraordinary evening. But so if we go back to the point where we were getting the first exit polls, as it were, and we were cautioning even at that point, because we know to our cost from the last couple of elections that we've worked on together as a team that election polls and pundits before elections often get it wrong, but they were suggesting it looked like a Hillary Clinton lead. And certainly the first few results as they trickled in, we're talking about sort of around midnight time, half past midnight time, they were all going as you were expecting. Places like Donald Trump taking West Virginia as expected, Hillary Clinton taking Delaware, Maryland, Massachusetts, New Jersey, Columbia, Donald Trump winning Oklahoma, South Carolina, going to Donald Trump just after 1 o'clock. But then we started to get a different mood music starting to emerge as the numbers were being looked at the headquarters. Just before 2 o'clock, a tweet was issued from the Clinton camp in which Hillary Clinton seemed to be saying to her supporters, thank you very much for what you've done. Whatever happens tonight, we can be proud. Now, a certain nervousness started rippling through the money markets as well. At a similar sort of point, we saw some of the currencies, the Mexican peso, really taking, as some of the money men were saying, taking a thumping overnight. Some of the Asian markets that had initially rallied on early opening falling fairly sharply. And the latest currency statistics we're getting, the pound rose 1% against the dollar, the euro up 1.86% on the two-day figures. So these sort of indicators starting to come in that the mood was shifting, and the bookies were always quite a good indication, aren't they, of what was going on.
Well,
much better than pollsters.
Funnily enough, we say that, except they haven't. I mean, their latest records have not been so good. I mean, they got it wrong on Brexit. Some of them have paid out on Clinton before this election even ran its course. So you're absolutely right to say.
No, but as the night moves, they seem to have their tentacles in every camp.
That's
you know
true,
what I mean?
But I'm talking about leading up to this whole night.
I totally agree,
Mike. They didn't get it right.
But I think what Sandy's saying is that a good indication of the way the night was going, same as the Brexit campaign, was the way the bookies started shifting their support.
So we get to about 3:30 this morning, and Ohio, this is the state that everyone is saying, watch where Ohio is going to go. That went to Donald Trump, 3:30 this morning. And we're now focusing in really on just a few marginal states. Certainly, as you will have heard in our news bulletin there, the New York Times is saying 92% likely that this is going to be a Donald Trump victory. Michigan seems to be one of the key remaining states because Michigan will return a fair few, 16 members of the Electoral College. Last time I looked...
And if he gets that, he's on 244. If he gets another 16, that puts him only 10 away.
Yes, 270, of course, is the magic number. At 67% of the vote counted in Michigan, 48% Trump, 46% Clinton. That's opened a little bit. It was 47 all earlier on.
A month ago, Sandy, Hillary had a 23% lead in Michigan. How about that? A month ago. And then since then, of course, the FBI, James Comey, must be a very relieved man because the FBI director, who he is, announced that they were reopening the investigation into Hillary Clinton. Right. He must be a very relieved man this morning because from the minute he announced they were reopening that investigation, her lead of 12% was cut to 2.
It was, and even though it was revealed then just 2 days before
closing it down again.
Actually there was nothing wrong, it wasn't terribly helpful to her, was it?
No, it was very unhelpful.
We've got clearly a few votes still to count. We thought we might have been able to call this about an hour ago, so one of the reasons we're running late, the turnout has been phenomenal. In some places, in New Hampshire, in some places they were reporting a 90% turnout, which is extraordinary. Florida, the highest percentage of voters they've ever seen. And some people were turning out. In some of the states, you could register to vote and vote on the same day. Hundreds of people emerging from the woodwork, as it were, that were just not being measured by the pollsters. And this has meant it's taken a little bit longer. And, of course, the closeness, if I can put it that way, of some of these votes, meaning it's taking a bit longer to bring that declaration than we thought.
You see, we call them the silent majority. In America, because we spoke to the guys there tonight, they call them the shy Trumps. These are the people who wouldn't admit to any pollsters or anybody else that they were supporting Trump.
The parties are very different moods. We've got pictures on the big screens that we've got in here. Certainly the pictures from the Hillary Clinton headquarters party in New York. There are people in tears. It is subdued.
Not much of a party, I'd say.
It's quite quiet. Donald Trump, they're nearly all sporting the red baseball cap, and there is a real sense of excitement and momentum there. In fact, one of the aides for Donald Trump, quite some time ago now, called it. Lane Bangerter, who's director of the Trump for President campaign in Idaho, called it some time ago, saying, "We are going to win. This is our night." Still a few bits and bobs to come in, but it is looking very much like the momentum is with Donald Trump.
And all the experts we've spoken to, and as you've said, the evidence on the ground at the Clinton HQ does not suggest that anyone thinks she can come back now.
No.
The numbers are just not really adding up now. There aren't enough seats left. There is still just potentially this extraordinary situation. If every result for the rest of tonight goes the way it would need to, we could end up with a dead heat, which would be just astonishing. I think that's very unlikely.
I'd bet $1 million against that.
Would you?
Definitely.
Okay. Well, you heard it here first. Of course,
brave man.
Bet responsibly, of course, is the watchword here at TalkSport. Parry's obviously betting responsibly because he's got more than $1 million, so that's okay.
That's a bit harsh.
You wouldn't want to be in any way made penurious out of that. Now, here's one from Losty who says, "I hope you're okay, Mike Parry. Bless. A true pro working through the pain. Something short and modern footballers should do."
Well, I really appreciate that. Who's that from? From
Losty.
Losty, yeah. Well, thank you very much indeed, because I have, in fact, got a racked back, and it's getting worse as the night goes on. I'm having to sit down. But I'm not complaining about it. I will work through the pain barrier.
Would you like to call for a stretcher for you?
No, don't call for a stretcher, but I want to say a big thank you to the dozens, if not scores, of very sympathetic messages that are coming in about my back. No, there's a lot more than that.
The gentle art of amplification, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, well, here's the Donald Trump. Here's the Donald Trump of TalkSport. He's channeling the exaggerator. Here's one from Ozzy Craig, I should say. He says, "Thanks, lads. Your election coverage has been as hilarious as the two candidates themselves." And he's in a place called Wodonga, Australia.
Doesn't this guy realise we're serious broadcasting
We
journalists?
are, absolutely right. Richard says, "Developing Trump leading now in Pennsylvania could be game over soon." So it's astonishing. It really has been quite a night.
It
As
has.
I say, currently 244 to 209. And lots and lots of miserable-looking people at Clinton's HQ. It could be that Donald Trump will be the 45th president of the United States of America.
Indeed.
This is TalkSport. This is TalkSport. We are the two mics. This is an election special, and it has been special, I can tell you, because it looks now very much as though the latest from Pennsylvania is Trump on 48.65%, Hillary Clinton 47.85%. That's a projection, of course. If he gets Pennsylvania, I think it is all over. How about this from Paul, who's tweeted in, "And to think our liberal, arrogant elite wanted to ban Trump from coming to the United Kingdom," which is true.
Yeah, and we've already spoken about senior politicians in this country who, very undiplomatically, but also very unpolitically, have made disparaging comments about the man who's now going to be, we're almost certain, the next president of the United States.
The 45th
and the leader
president
of the free world.
President Trump. Let's talk to Craig Robinson, who's from the IowaRepublican.com, a Trump supporter, voted for Trump, we believe. Craig, it's a very good morning to you, I would imagine.
Yes, pretty surprising night here in America.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's the interesting thing. We're hearing that, and even a lot of people who've supported Trump and voted for Trump didn't really expect him to win.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think that when you look at this, I mean, the media did a very good job of convincing themselves that Trump just couldn't win. And so that's what you've heard for weeks and weeks and weeks. And yet, when the votes are counted, we're seeing Trump win states that, heck, even the Trump campaign didn't think they could win, like Wisconsin and a lot of these Rust Belt states. And so, it's just a very interesting night to watch it unfold.
Well, it's a fascinating night indeed, Craig, and you're absolutely right about the unbalanced coverage of the two candidates, because everybody pointed out the faults that Mr. Trump apparently has, but the scandal surrounding some of the Clinton business dealings and the Clinton Foundation misappropriation of money allegations has never been investigated properly. Presumably now it will be.
Oh, right, I absolutely, and I think that, these were personal failings of Trump, things that he had said, and they were all personal in nature. Where the scandals surrounding Hillary Clinton were very serious, and it goes to how she governs, and I think the American people understood that. Plus, look, we've had 30 years of Clintons in this country, and so I think when you're looking for change, and there's an appetite for change, she didn't offer anything. Except that, hey, Trump is a no-good, dirty, rotten scoundrel. You can't vote for him. He's unpresidential. Well, that didn't work.
Yeah. And actually, in some ways, it did work, but completely in the wrong way. It worked in reverse, effectively, because I've got this. You may not get the reference here, but it's a reference to a football result. Beyonce, Jay-Z, Lady Gaga, De Niro, Katy Perry, liberal media. Your girl took one hell of a beating, and that's kind of what's happened. The more that people like John Bon Jovi and Bruce Springsteen and Katy Perry lined up against Donald Trump, I would imagine the more people thought, well, actually, why would I want to do what you tell me to do?
Well, right. And I think that there is a contrarian nature to politics in America, and I think across the globe, where if you spend so much time telling people that you can't do something or you can't, support someone or anything like that, I think they'll actually say, no, I can do that. It's my choice. You don't tell me what we're going to do. We actually go to the polls and we decide ourselves.
That's right. Craig, do you think that America must be deaf and blind? Because I can't understand how nobody noticed that when Hillary Clinton came out of the White House as First Lady and told the world we've got to raise a mortgage to get a house, a few years later she's now got a fortune of $150 million. Where did it come from?
Right. And I think the Clinton Foundation and kind of the pay-to-play scandal that was unearthed late really bothers people. And this is never really addressed. In these major presidential debates, she was asked about this and really just kind of blew it off, just like her emails.
Exactly.
Like it's some vast right-wing conspiracy. I'm not going to answer your question. And I think that voters watch this and say, I don't want that in the White House. And so regardless of how bad Donald Trump behaves, there's always a level of honesty with Trump. We know what he thinks of women. Yeah. We know what he doesn't have any sort of control of his mouth sometimes, which is problematic, but at least it's honest and we can deal with it.
One of the quick questions I'd like to ask you before we let you go, Craig, is do you have any inkling as to what Donald Trump will do when he becomes president? What is his actual, manifesto policy? What will he? Because we can imagine, him sitting at the Oval Office desk and just laughing to himself, going, "I can't believe actually this is what happened." What will he actually do?
Look, this is a great question because I think Donald Trump will just be the president. We've had in Bush and Obama, we had two presidents, Republican and Democrat, who really pushed their own agenda to put demands on Congress. You need to implement my program. I think Trump's going to look at Congress and say, hey, if you guys want to fix these problems, you better send me some bills. Get to work, guys. And honestly, I think that'll be refreshing. That's how our government was constructed. And so I don't think Trump's going to be – he might want to build his wall along the southern border to secure the southern border of the United States. But beyond that, I don't think he's going to be really aggressive on his own agenda. He'll have things he wants, but I think he's going to put the ball and the onus on Congress to get things done.
Yeah, well,
he's not going to stick the Trump name on Air Force One, is he?
My question
question is will he fly on Air Force One, and it'll be a step down.
Yeah,
and what's the Trump presidential library going to look like? Can we start talking about that? I mean, it's going to be insane.
It's going to be brilliant. You've got a Trump presidential seal. Can you imagine? It's a big T.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's in many ways. It's in many ways. It's as much of it's an unknown. I mean, lots of people are still in shock here in this country. Here's one from somebody talking about the Chris. He says Trump as president, the killer clown frenzy is still going on. Then,
yeah, I know.
Well, read it and weep, I think, is what you're going to have to say.
He makes so many practical statements, i.e., that I agree with you, he's short on policy, but he said, I don't want to make America great again. Yeah. That resonates with people.
Well, I mean, in many ways, it harks back to the Ronald Reagan era, wasn't it? It's morning in America, the glistening city on the hill, and all that. And I mean, it turned out that he actually did have some quite good policies.
Make America great again, 4 words. What did Obama used to say? Yes, we can.
Yeah.
3 words, okay?
Yeah.
But I mean,
what are you saying? One extra word has moved things on.
No, what I'm saying is you need a phrase of 4 words or less to get yourself voted in as a president of the United States.
In your case, it would be vote Porky, vote often.
Yeah, well, that's 4 words, isn't it? That's good.
That's what I mean.
I wanted to say to you, Mike, the contrast with this morning to 24 years ago when Hillary Clinton was First Lady must be astonishing. I would imagine she is now in utter despair.
She will be.
Because this has been her lifelong dream.
Yeah.
She dreamed of being President of the United States even before Bill Clinton became President of the United States.
And she stepped aside for Obama, didn't she?
She stepped aside for Obama. But do you remember in the build-up to the first Bill Clinton victory, she said 2 things. First of all, she said, we were only practising.
Yeah.
So they didn't expect to be able to knock George H. Bush, George Bush Sr., off his pedestal because he was such a popular president. He'd been involved in a Middle East war, which America actually won.
Yeah.
And therefore he's very president. But he refused to go out and campaign against a man he called a bozo.
Yeah.
My dogs know more about foreign policy than this bozo Clinton, you know, and all that kind of stuff. So she said, we're only practising. But do you remember her other stock phrase was, if you vote for my husband Bill Clinton, you get 2 for 1.
2 for 1.
Do you remember?
That's right.
So she already, in those days, 24 years ago,
she was very much
herself as an equal to the man who was going to be president.
Of course, and she was very much in the organisation and the failed medical bill that they tried to pass.
Absolutely.
He basically put her in charge of it all.
Yeah.
And instead of that, they've now reformed it as Obamacare, which has failed miserably, no matter which way you look at it.
Failed miserably again. But do you not remember also, she was the first First Lady to have a suite of offices down the corridor from the president.
Exactly.
In the East Wing.
Yeah.
And she had a seat of power, and she had assistants, and she had PAs, and she had press officers. No First Lady had ever had that sort of support and build. She saw herself as a power in the land from day one.
Yeah.
When I saw her step out on the veranda there in Little Rock, when it had been declared that Bill Clinton was the 41st President of the United States, and the smile on her face, the beatific, I've got everything I wanted in life, which everybody thought she had because she was First Lady, she was only halfway towards her plan. And the fruition of her plan has just collapsed around her ashes, turned to ashes.
Yeah, indeed. Do you think perhaps that she was also one who was considering over the past couple of weeks that she should change the decorations in the White House? She was thinking about, what she might do with the curtains.
I'm certain.
Precisely what sort of people she would appoint into her cabinet. This will be as big of a shock to her as she has ever had.
I'm certain she will have been telling people over the past months, things are going to be different in the White House when I get there, you know? Yeah. You're not talking now about a First Lady, you're talking about a US President, you know? And what I say goes. She'll have been saying all of that, I'm sure.
She talked with that sort of accent?
Yeah, because that's the sort of woman she was. And I'll tell the famous joke again that went round Washington in the days when I was there, Bill and Hillary are in the car, they're going down south, and they stop to get some gas, and Bill Clinton says, hey, honey, aren't you glad you married me, the President of the United States, instead of that guy who's pumping the gas? And, of course, Hillary says, Bell, if I'd have married that guy pumping the gas, he'd have been the President of the United States of America, and you'd be pumping gas.
And she might well be right.
That's the way she saw herself.
She might well be right.
She saw herself as the inspiration behind the Clinton presidency for 8 years, and then the successor to it.
But the trouble is that in this rise to fame that she has had, and as I said earlier, I mean, it may be unfair that people do look upon her as a very unlikable figure, because people have said that they've worked with her in Congress and in the House of Representatives and the Senate. She works hard. Yeah. She's quite a loyal person. She's actually quite good at her job. job. Problem is, she's been the establishment candidate against a massive wave of people who want to get rid of the establishment.
That's right.
In the same way that they did during the Brexit referendum. Difference, of course, for Hillary Clinton is that she can't go to a parliament and try and get something reversed. She can't, she can't actually go to a judge and say, I think I should be president. It doesn't work like that. Donald Trump will take the job, and we hope in the next half an hour we'll be able to bring you absolute confirmation of that. Clinton wins Nevada is what we're being told at the moment, but I don't know whether that's going to help. The score still currently 244 to 209 in Donald Trump's favour. If he wins Michigan, that'll get him very close to the magic number of 270.
It certainly will.
And if you look at the contrasting pictures from the Trump rally and the Clinton rally, you'll see people in despair, weeping, holding each other, making phone calls, whereas in the Trump rally,
life is over.
They're all punching the air.
And the other thing is, of course, that she will never get a chance to go again.
No.
Now, Richard Nixon famously lost very, very narrowly to John F. Kennedy in 1960. He came again, and he became a two-term president, interrupted, of course, by the fact he got impeached. But he won 2 elections. But he could have felt aggrieved, really, because if you think about it, Nixon was up against a John F. Kennedy campaign run by his father, Joseph Kennedy, who was one of the most corrupt politicians America's ever produced. And if it had not been for his father's friendship with, was it Giacomo, the gangster boss, who controlled Michigan and West Virginia and got him the Teamsters and got him the last few votes, then John F. Kennedy would never have been the president of the United States. And if people call Donald Trump unfit to be president, you should have seen the background of the John F. Kennedy presidential campaign and what happened in the White House when he got there.
Indeed.
A disgrace.
Now, how about this for a football reference? Cheyenne says, tonight's result should make for a very entertaining USA v Mexico World Cup qualifier on Friday.
It certainly will.
What can you say? England-Scotland on as well, of course. This is Talk Sport. Well, it's been quite a night here on Talk Sport and Talk Radio, but we'll go our separate ways at 6 o'clock. Alan Brazil coming up here, but on Talk Radio, it's Mr. Paul Ross to carry the baton. Paul, very good morning to you.
And what a heavy baton this morning. I'd set my alarm for every hour and 15 minutes, thinking by 1-ish I could have 3 hours kip. Oh, no, I couldn't.
No.
Because suddenly things changed. That seismic shift, that watershed moment. Once again, the pollsters on the other side of the Atlantic have got it completely wrong. I do wonder now whether we should think of banning polls, because whether it actually influences people to vote against the poll. They think, actually, I need to turn out, or whatever. Also, the big thing is for me, Hillary Clinton went to Florida 13 times since the Democratic Convention. Barack Obama practically bought a timeshare in North Carolina. They still could not keep those states. So we'd love to know from people this morning on the Full Set Breakfast, do they think it's the right decision? Do they think it's something they agree with? And what do they think lies behind it? Because it seems to me there's an old Chesterton poem, the bloke who created Father Brown. He said, "We are the people of England who have not spoken yet." I wonder whether this is maybe not the silent majority, but a group that feel disenfranchised.
Well, they're called the shy Trumps. We've
that's only a small part of them, though, isn't it?
No, I don't think it is.
There's no shy Trumps in the rally.
Piers Morgan called the rather unpleasantly the silent Trumpers, and we all know those guys. But maybe those people, because we spoke to somebody yesterday who's a Republican, but said, "I've not put the placard, the billboard on my front lawn for fear of abuse."
Well, what they feared in this election is that they wouldn't actually declare themselves, because whichever side wins, there's going to be reverberations against the other side. I mean, Trump has not even given any indication he's going to pull back on the idea of summoning Hillary Clinton to explain why there's been mismanagement of a fund worth $150 million. I mean, he might still go for it. She, on the other hand, was going to turn on him business-wise, so there's going to be recrimination.
I think it's pretty
somewhere,
clear.
probably.
I think it's pretty clear that it's a vote against the establishment, because I think there's a problem here, as there was during the Brexit referendum. There's an awful lot of people who feel as though the political class, if you like, have just left them behind. And they don't really care what goes on between one election and another. They're feathering their own nest. They're having a great life. They're getting expenses. They're flying around at the taxpayers' expense. And I think people finally got the idea that, well, maybe we can just stop that.
And I read a fascinating book about 8 or 9 years ago. It was out in 2007 called The Black Swan by a man called Nassim Taleb. And it's basically about the highly improbable when it hits our lives. And it sounds a bit pretentious, but what he talks about things like 9/11 and Google. It's not always negative. massive, and this is one of those black swan events because nobody can predict absolutely why it's happened. It's almost a perfect, like for example, the number of people who voted independent in Florida could have actually seen Hillary Clinton clinch the victory.
Yeah.
So you kind of think it's maybe ABC, anyone but
and
Clinton.
we might discover, as we found from the Bushes, and the Bushes apparently went to vote. They didn't put anybody's name down. They just put none of the above because you can do that. You don't have to vote for a particular person. So it could be that in some of these key states, her vote has been diluted by people who just didn't like her
Paul,
enough.
here for you is the most relieved man in America. His name is James Comey. He's the director of the FBI. He's the man who reopened the case against Hillary 10 days ago. She then presumably put the political muscle on the bloke because he closed it down 3 days ago. But nevertheless, her lead in that period that it was open again went from a 12-point lead over Trump to a 2-point lead. So he gained 10 points due to the fact, or certainly to coincide with the fact, that Mr. Comey reopened the investigation into Hillary Clinton.
While the FBI are great investigators and federal, it's really the job of the courts to decide guilt or non-guilt, isn't it? Not really the FBI. They said, there's nothing criminal. Well, how do we know that? How quickly did they read those thousands of emails?
God knows.
Well, that's the
thousands
interesting
of
thing,
them.
isn't it?
Yeah.
And I mean, the other point about what's happened overnight as well is that the Republicans have literally swept the board, so they're going to have control of the House and the Senate, which means that basically they will be able to do whatever Donald Trump wants them to do.
Yeah.
So there will not be any kind of checks and balances in the system. And we were asking the question earlier. We don't really know what he will do when he sits down behind that Oval Office desk, apart from fall about laughing and go, I can't believe I actually did this.
And when he emerged as the front runner, there was a lot of chortling amongst the kind of media classes, amongst the Westminster elite about, so we might have a scenario where Donald Trump is sitting down with Jeremy Corbyn, President and Prime Minister, but maybe we will. Maybe it'll be the geography teacher meeting the psychopath billionaire.
And what about Bojo, our Foreign Secretary, Boris Johnson, being less than diplomatic about his views on Mr. Trump in the run-up to our own election?
They'll make that up, though. They've got the same hairdresser.
Well, they'll probably say something
Paul
like
Ross
that,
coming up at 6 o'clock.
Guys, a great show this morning.
Thank you very
were on
much.
fire.
Thank you very much indeed. We've got lots more coming up. Sharky says, how about the next move for Hillary is to divorce Bill, which could happen. Let's talk now, though, to Boor Deng, Washington correspondent for The Times over there in the US of A. Boor, a very good morning to you, and a very good morning if you're a Donald Trump supporter, I guess.
Good morning to you as well. It's actually quite late at night here, so I should really be saying...
Yeah, I do know that, Boor. It's okay.
Good evening, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I'm sorry, but I mean, for us, it's quite a shocking event, I suppose. A lot of people weren't expecting Donald Trump to be the 45th president of the United States. What's the sort of mood music where you are?
I think you're absolutely right. Everyone is certainly quite in shock at the closeness of this election, which was certainly not projected by any of the polls. Even Donald Trump's own analytics team was saying that their internal projections had him much further back. But he's sort of doing something that he promised to do, really, which is to remake the electoral map and to bring out Republican voters in traditionally Democratic states. So in places like Wisconsin and Michigan and Pennsylvania, which are sort of being, Michigan and Pennsylvania are being watched very closely right now. They've not yet been called, but those are sort of traditionally Democratic states where the race is very, very close, and it's come down to there for Hillary Clinton to have any sort of path forward.
That's right. Boor, could you tell us how easy or otherwise it is for a man who's had no political experience in the past to walk into the Oval Office as leader of the Western world and the United States president and start dealing with government business? I mean, you know, my colleague here, Mike, said the morning after the inauguration, he'll be sitting in the Oval Office and he'll be smiling, he'll be looking around at the pictures of past presidents and saying, wow, isn't it great to be here? But actually, it takes a bit of skill, doesn't it, to kickstart the government with the policies that you want to pursue?
Yeah, absolutely, and especially for Trump, who, despite the fact that he'll, if he will be coming into the Oval Office, he'll likely have a majority in both the House and the Senate, but he's got vastly different ideas than big parts of his party about what he wants to do. He's at odds with Paul Ryan, the Speaker of the House, on immigration, on trade, several senators whose support he'll need in the Senate actually didn't vote for him this election and sort of were very vocal critics. And in order to pass these sort of big policies that he's promised on the campaign trail, reforming the tax code, building a wall, banning Muslims from the U.S., which may or may not be constitutional, he'll not only need the support of Congress, but also really to have had a mandate coming into the White House. And he certainly won't be coming in with that since it's been such a divisive election.
And do you think he'll keep that division up? Because, I mean, in many ways, his strength has been exploiting the division. So it's not really in his interest to actually prevent the division from continuing, is it? And presumably, he's also going to look at guys like yourself and the media, who he calls, you know, the world's greatest dishonesty brokers and, you know, the most corrupt people in the world, the media. I mean, he's hardly going to have a great relationship with them, is he?
Yeah, and certainly to pass legislation, even though he'll have a Republican majority, he won't have a big enough majority that he can't work with, or that Republicans can just ram things through without Democrats. But it's hard to imagine that it would be in any Democrat's interest to help Donald Trump pass legislation for the wall, or start deporting people or anything like that. So I mean, if he wants to be a successful president who can pass legislation, it's going to be really tough for him to see him really trying to work across the aisle. On the other hand, he does have sort of people. He's promised to have people around him who will be good advisors and will sort of know the nuts and bolts of how Congress works. Mike Pence, his vice presidential running mate, was governor of Indiana and previously was a congressman, so he's got a lot of experience. If he can sort of have a good relationship with Mitch McConnell, who's the Senate leader, he'll maybe get some help there. But it's just really hard to say sort of why any Democrat would be in a bargaining mood.
Sure. But isn't it a flaw in the American political system that right now the markets and the dollar and the state of business in America is responding to perceptions about the next president, but the next president can't actually indicate what he's going to do to sheer up the economy and to make things work until he gets into office after the inauguration in January. So now there's this great vacuum, isn't there?
Well, you're certainly right that the markets are responding sort of quite panicked at the prospect of a Trump presidency. The Dow has fallen about 800 points in futures trading. Yeah. And one of the great sort of indicators this election of how well Donald Trump is doing has been the Mexican peso, which has also sort of plunged over the course of the night. But in terms of what a president is planning on doing for sort of economic recovery, I don't really think that's the case. I think Hillary Clinton has laid out a very specific plan about just a multitude of things.
Yeah.
She wants to invest in infrastructure and start an infrastructure bank.
Well, that all goes in the bin now, of course, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah, I'm afraid so. And funnily enough, talking more about Donald Trump working across the aisle and all that, I think that's not the sort of language you're going to be hearing for the next 4 years, because that's not the way he operates. Donald Trump blunders into a room, forces his way.
He gets things done.
He gets things done. He forces his way to the back of the room and the front of the room, and he tells people how he's going to do it.
Got to make America work.
And if you don't like it, he throws you out. And I can't see him changing his persona suddenly now because he's become a politician. Can you?
No, I mean I completely agree. I think that means we're in for a lot more gridlock in Washington, rather than that he'll actually force his way through because of all the reasons that I said. Because when you're in D.C., unfortunately, for Mr. Trump, you do actually have to work with a lot of stakeholders who probably don't agree with you. And
why won't anybody sort of say, actually, this guy could be a great president? You know, this guy could be a revolutionary great president. He has broken the mould.
Well, actually, I do think there are people who say that, and certainly Mr. Trump's supporters think that that's what he's capable of doing, and they see sort of Mr. Trump in the mold of Ronald Reagan, who famously was not very good with the policy details, but sort of very visionary and would say things that that his advisors didn't quite know if he exactly meant it or
no, but people
or
liked
not.
him. People liked Ronald Reagan because he was self-deprecating, which is something that Donald Trump definitely isn't.
And people, kind of identified with the way that he spoke.
Yeah.
Paul, listen, thank you very much
you very
indeed.
much.
It's going to be an interesting time in Washington for the next 4 years. Paul Dano, Washington correspondent for The Times. We may or may not get an idea of Michigan and indeed possibly Pennsylvania over the course of the next 10 minutes. We're here until 6 o'clock. It's time for the Alan Brazil Sports Breakfast. Paul Ross, of course, over on Talk Radio will be carrying on as well. This is Talk Sport.
That's great. It starts with an earthquake, birds and snakes, an airplane, and Lenny Bruce is not afraid. I have a hurricane. Listen to yourself. Churn world serves its own needs. Dummy serve your own needs. Beat it up and not speak. Grunt, no strength. The ladder starts to clatter with fear. Fight down, high wire in a fire. Represented 7 games in the government for hire in a combat site. Left to us are coming in a hurry with the furies breathing down your neck. Team by team reporters babble Trump, Kevin Croft. Look at that, no plane, fine, then, overflow, population common food, but it'll do. Save yourself, serve yourself, world serves its own needs. Listen to your heartbeat, dummy with the rapture and the reverend and the right. You patriotic, slam, fight, bright, light, feeling, pretty sight. It's the end of the world as we know it. It's the end
Now,
of
not at all that we're saying it's the end of the world as we know it, but I do wonder. I have one question for you. Do you
That
think,
was REM, wasn't it?
It was REM, yeah. Do you think that Donald Trump will still be claiming that the system is rigged now that he's won the election?
Well, no.
I mean, presumably, he quite likes the system now.
Yeah, but Donald Trump makes up the law as he goes along, and reacts to it.
Well, this is
in
what
his
I mean.
own-
I mean, Paul
own
Deng
way.
there from the Times talking
Yeah.
about working across the aisle and all this kind of stuff. You're not going to work across the aisle at all. He's going to probably brick the aisle up.
I would think
and
so.
he's going to
yeah.
say, if you're not on my side, you're the enemy.
That's right.
Let's talk to Paul Wolverton, who's down at the Fayetteville Observer in North Carolina. Trump, of course, took North Carolina a couple of hours ago. We're still waiting to see if he's got Michigan. I mean, I don't see anybody at the Clinton HQ who looks like somebody who thinks that she's going to come back.
Well, nobody's coming forward to speak up on her behalf anyway.
No, exactly right. Let's talk to Paul. Paul, very good morning to you. Welcome to the show.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Now,
thanks for joining us.
Now, this has come as a bit of a shock to a lot of people, not least possibly to Donald Trump supporters, and I mean, maybe even to Donald Trump himself. I mean, are you prepared for Donald Trump, president of the 45th Oval Office?
Whether we're prepared or not, it looks like we're going to be doing that.
It does look like that, doesn't it? Now, I mean, when over in your part of the world did it seem as though this could be possible? Because we've been here all night, and it was round about sort of, I would say, a couple of hours ago when it started to look like it was going Trump's way.
Yeah, here in North Carolina, the polling has been going back and forth, and it's been neck and neck on this race and some of the down ballot races between the Republicans and the Democrats. And, Hillary Clinton did her final appearance here in North Carolina at midnight last night in Raleigh, big rally at NC State University. So shows how much of a swing state we are. But I think the Hillary Clinton supporters were holding out hope based on the recent polling that was showing North Carolina leaning her way. And a lot of people like to look at 538, if you're familiar with that Nate Silver's site where he does the predictions, and they were all like, okay, Hillary's going to win. And I think late this afternoon, early this evening, the Clinton supporters, they were just becoming extremely emotional and upset because they saw things turning against them.
Yeah, we saw them all sort of in tears, really, and looking very wan. And now, where you come from, Paul, the sort of eastern seaboard, it's in mourning now, isn't it, really? Because you do have a reputation of being the sort of liberal elite of the United States.
North Carolina is an interesting state. It's, in many ways, it's a progressive Democrat state, or it has been over the last 50 years or so.
Yeah.
But it's also in many ways a very conservative state.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you're familiar with former Senator Jesse Helms. He's passed away now. He was a super intense conservative Republican elected from a Democratic state. What would happen is they would have what they call Jesse Cats, Jesse Crats. They vote down ballot for Democrats, but they vote up ballot for Republicans. And we saw them vote for president frequently for Republicans. Obama was unusual in 2008 that he won this state. But also the state has been shifting Republican over the past, I'd say, 15 years or so. Democrats controlled the state at the state legislature up until 2010. They controlled it for more than a century. And all of a sudden, the Republicans took majority control, and then they got the governor's mansion in 2012.
Right.
And they're still reeling from that, and they haven't quite figured out how to come back from that.
Paul, just very quickly on a personal level, I mean, do you see yourself now as a land divided? And if it's so divided by those who are anti-establishment and working class and who feel they've had a rough deal over the years, I mean, how do you position yourself and how do you deal with that?
There is something to that. Here in North Carolina, the bigger cities, which all voted for Clinton, they've got the wealth and the money, the golden crescent along Interstate I-85 from Raleigh to Charlotte. But then the rural areas in between, the jobs left this part of the country and went to China and Mexico and other parts of the world, the textile plants that made the shirts and the cloth and the we used to have a speaker factory here and a sneaker factory here, and those are all gone now. The jobs are gone, and the people left behind, Trump appealed to those people in a way that a lot of people couldn't or wouldn't, and what's interesting about it, too, is, the government has promised forever to help them, and Hillary Clinton comes from the government. Trump promised to help them, and he very much appealed to them. Not too far from here was a Black & Decker tool factory, which in the last 10 years literally closed down, and they shipped the manufacturing equipment to Mexico.
Yeah, well,
that's where it's all gone.
It's all about a man and his Black & Decker.
The Mexican peso currently hitting a record low against the US dollar. That's Paul Wolverton there from North Carolina, the Rayetteville Observer. I mean, in many ways, this is the kind of the harvest being reaped, really, from years and years and years of government neglect.
It is.
Government doing nothing. Government absolutely
I tell you, Mike, I
leadership.
told you last night I saw a documentary on Johnstown in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
And, 20 years ago, that was a strong economic town. It was part of the steel industry. It was unattainable. It couldn't be matched by anywhere in the world. Now it's gone. It's just gone. It's closed down. You're absolutely right. That's it. Government neglect. Bang. Old industry's gone. New industry's not replacing them. What do you do next?
And nobody actually filling in the right pieces of the form or the box or anything for the people who actually want something out of them.
Absolutely. And Trump suddenly comes forward and identifies them, as you quite rightly say, a billionaire financier from New York, picking up the blue-collar vote.
President Trump. It's got a ring to it.
Certainly has.
Have you sort of got your head around that one yet?
No, not really. No, because you and I have both seen. Remember when he was he had a bit part in the Corley McCulkin film?
Yeah, Home Alone.
It was Home Alone 1 or 2.
Yeah, because he used to own the Plaza.
He used to own the Plaza, and they filmed it in there, didn't they? And he was walking down
I'll tell
the
you what
corridor.
it's going to be. It's going to be a great fun being a journalist in this day and age. I mean, even though he thinks we're the most untrustworthy people in the entire world, Donald Trump looks like he is going to be the 45th president of the United States. Coming up next, it's the Alan Brazil Sports Breakfast.
This is not the sound of a second-place finisher, that I could tell.
Fascinating the last few hours. Mike Graham and Mike Parry from 1 o'clock have taken us right through, and it just looks now, guys, that Pennsylvania is going the way of Trump.
It certainly does. It certainly does, yeah. I mean, Florida went to Trump, and it was so close all the way up till about 4:30 in the morning that everybody knew that he could, if he didn't get Florida, he couldn't win. But when he got Florida, and Hillary Clinton, as Mike pointed out, started putting out tweets that sounded like she had lost.
Unbelievable.
That was ages ago. I heard that.
It was 2:30 in the morning, and she's putting out tweets saying things like, whatever happens tonight, I want to thank you all for a brilliant campaign. It's all been great. She lost, and that's because these parties have hundreds of millions of pounds and dollars to have their own polling institutions, which are microscopically right, and they knew they'd lost it. They knew they'd lost it by 2:30 this morning.
Yeah, and obviously it now looks as though, we're going to have the first president in the White House who has never served in the military and who's never been in political office at all. So nobody knows what's going to happen.
Well, do you know what? I was talking about this, right? Personally, I couldn't vote for either, right?
Yeah.
But I'm just saying it, that I'm rather pleased she's not won it, because I don't like her. He didn't help himself what he said, but if he's got good guys around him, who knows? I don't know. Who knows? He might turn out to be a decent president.
It's going to be interesting to see what he changes, guys.
This is the problem with American politics, because although he's voted as American president today, he doesn't get into office until the second week in January.
Right.
So you've got this hiatus now, and of course all the markets are panicking and saying, "Oh, what's he going to do?" Trade barriers and all that. So the market sinks like that. He can't do anything about it now until January.
Well, you might also see a situation which was similar to when Ed Balls left that note in the
That's
Treasury
right,
office
there's no
saying,
money.
we've spent all the money when the Tories came in. You might get Barack Obama in the next sort of 6 weeks suddenly going, right, what can we screw up for Donald Trump before he gets in here?
Yeah. Is it the investigation will change everything to you guys?
Sorry?
The investigation
The FBI.
into...
Well, the guy from the FBI, James Cornick, who leads the FBI, must be the most relieved man in the world, because if Hillary Clinton had gone in, when he reopened the investigation, Hillary Clinton had a 12% lead over Donald Trump. That was 10 days ago. By the time he closed it down again and said, oh, actually, we've had another thing, that lead had reduced to 2%. Absolutely.
Do you know what as well, Mike Graham? If and it's still an if, look, we've got to be careful here. He's not won it yet. At the moment, what we're looking at, 244 against 215 for Clinton at the moment. But if he gets in and Giuliani's got a big part to play in Trump, what's he going to do with Hillary?
Well, I mean, he's going to be his Attorney General by the sounds of it.
Because he does not like Hillary.
Rudy and Hillary go way
America.
back, and I think he will be putting that guy from the FBI back on her case, and he'll be trying to look not so much necessarily at the email trail, but he'll be looking at the foundation. The foundation, some believe, has been spending money in an inappropriate, possibly illegal way.
It's very interesting, fellas. She came out of the White House with Bill Clinton, right, after he'd done 8 years there, and she said on the steps of the White House, well, Bill and I'll have to go and get a mortgage now. Well, the Clinton Foundation's now got $150 million. So they've acquired $150 million. And one of the allegations is that when her daughter got married, when Chelsea got married, instead of them using their own money, and they've got a personal fortune of $60 or $70 million, they used $3 million from the Clinton Foundation, which is supposed to to help people overseas who are starving.
It's only an allegation, of course.
It was a good wedding, though.
Ray, I don't know if you're up to your US politics.
Well, I was listening to the two mics coming in,
just
so very interesting. I mean, last night
the turnout was very, very high, so the people have spoken.
It was huge. Well, she was huge favourite last night, 1-5 on to win.
Yes,
and suddenly now,
and it suddenly shifted around about 3 o'clock in the morning, where basically he was made such a massive odds-on favourite that you thought, she is not coming back from
Ray
this.
will tell you, I phoned them up, say, Ray, I'm going to have a bet.
Yeah.
What price to win Ohio? But that was
2-5.
But what time was that at? That was nowhere near 3 in the morning.
No, that was about
10:30 at night.
Yeah, 9:30, 10.
And it was odds on. I was going to double up with Florida, and I thought, what am I doing?
Yeah.
Why don't you do it? It won.
I know.
They're going to have to close down all these polling companies now because this is the third one on the trot. The British general election, the Brexit vote, and now the US general election. They haven't got anywhere near being right.
The bookmakers are getting it wrong quite often. The Brexit they got it wrong as well.
The bookmakers have to be following the pollsters because they haven't really got any other way of knowing what's happening.
Tell me, as Trump's, have we seen celebrations?
No, because she hasn't conceded yet, and that's what we're waiting for. That's what will happen next. You'll see Hillary Clinton step forward and concede. Now, whether she's gracious or not to the victor, we don't know, because there's a terrific animosity between these two.
Is she finished? If she loses this, she's finished?
She's definitely, politically, she's definitely finished, and the whole Clinton legacy is kind of over and done with. And I think what we have seen is from about 2 hours ago, both of their HQs are in New York City. The HQ for the Clintons, people were weeping, people were going home early. It was reminiscent of Stamford Bridge, in fact, on Saturday, as the fifth goal went in against Everton. People were leaving, crying.
The fifth bottle of wine went down.
Similar to
then
that.
the tears started.
Exactly.
Yeah, they did. Now Roy Keane's having a go.
Now Roy Keane's having a go. But of course,
it's not a good week in the world.
But if you look at the Trump camp, they're starting to high five each other. They're all wearing these "Make America Great" things. Yeah. And what's also interesting is you heard Sarah Palin there talking on the news that they were kind of inspired by Brexit, and it's all of this has been kicked off by Nigel Farage. So not only is he now messed up Britain's communications with Europe, but he's now started to put people into power in America.
I was laughing at Mike this morning about Boris Johnson. That'd be funny.
What happens there? Yeah, when he sees the new president of the United States with the worse hair than him.
Well, like we were saying, there were people who wanted to ban Trump from coming here.
That's right,
Can you imagine that? If that had happened, if they'd actually got that through.
The other interesting aspect, Mike raised it earlier, was the marriage now between the Clintons, because hasn't been a marriage for about 25 years, if you see what I mean, and it's always been a unison of convenience. They were a terrifically powerful political couple. When they got in, I was in Little Rock in '92 when they got in there. And she actually said, "Oh, isn't it great? US of America gets 2 for 1." She actually put herself on a par with Bill Clinton in those days, but she didn't succeed.
She lost it.
She will go down as the worst candidate in the history of the Democratic Party because she lost an election that she was 12 or 15 points ahead on to a guy who runs a reality TV show.
I'm looking forward to talking to Hank this morning because the oil I've already texted a couple of friends of mine, and they're all game, and that's gone woof. The equities,
currency,
Mexico, the dollar's gone zoom.
It's a good time to go to Mexico. You get a lot of pesos for your dollar at the moment.
The Mexico peso.
Next Mrs. Paddy, Mexico. Head down there.
The Mexican peso can now be exchanged for Lucky Bags, official.
Yeah,
guys, a sterling job. Thank you very much through the morning, through the night, and this morning, of course.
Don't forget to come back tomorrow for another sparkling, as fizzy as a bottle of champagne podcast from the Two Mikes.
Don't forget to follow the Two Mikes at the Two Mikes on Twitter and on YouTube. Just look for Two Mikes TV.